The best place to hide the truth is in the pages of a book.
Maybe we should just read. Maybe we should just read.
Welcome to Hayes Reviews. Hello everybody, this is Nick, creator of Hayes Reviews, and we're back for another live stream. Tonight we are continuing our reading from Vernon Coleman's book, Endgame, The Hidden Agenda 21. This is part 3 in the series. I thought there was only going to be 2 parts maybe in this, but we were blessed that Vernon Coleman gave us permission to read the entirety of the book on the channel, so we're back. We're going to be doing that every Friday until we get the book finished, and then after that, we're going to be reading Zbigniew Brzezinski's book, which is actually just further up there. I can't grab it. Between Two Ages. And I saw on a bit of television, yes, I was watching a bit of television earlier today when I was eating my lunch. There was a character in there called Zbigniew, and that's how his name was pronounced. And I thought it was curious because the only place I've ever seen the name Zbigniew or Zbigniew was Zbigniew Brzezinski and also this guy. So the series I was watching was called Capital on Netflix, and you know, it's television, it's propaganda, it's brainwashing, so stay clear of it. Unless you are in the business of analyzing propaganda and brainwashing and talking to other people about it and pointing out the subtleties, the way that information is encoded into these narratives and storylines, and the way that we're at risk of downloading that information while we're sat there with our jaws open and our tongues lolling, staring at the screen, being hypnotized. And if you're in the business of analyzing that and pointing that out, then by all means go and watch it. But if you're in the business of living life and trying to be a human being and trying to move forward on this planet during this little time that you have here to do something beautiful and creative and productive and wonderful for yourself, for the people in your life, the family members, the friends, the colleagues, the neighbors, then you know, you could probably do with cutting the TV out altogether. It's not going to do you any harm. And I know it's scary when I say that, but trust me, you can do it. And you might feel better for it. You just never know. I just have a smudge on my glasses. I'm going to have to wipe that. But thank you to everybody who's tuning in on the live. We got Rumble, Odyssey, and YouTube up and running, and Entropy tonight. So if you're tuning in live, it's wonderful to have you here. If you are watching on the replay, please remember that there'll be a pinned comment below the video with timestamps so you can jump ahead to the various parts of tonight's preamble ramble and the various parts of tonight's reading. We're going to be here for about 3 hours-ish in total, so I hope you're all comfortable. You've got yourself a drink and a snack and whatever else it is that you need to get through a 3-hour-long live stream if you are here for the duration. But it's wonderful to have you here. It really is. And I've got a nice little preamble ramble prepared. It's not going to be as long as the others, so we should spend a little more time reading the book tonight. But I think you'll agree, those who've seen the first parts in this series, Vernon Coleman's an excellent writer. He writes with wit. He's very incisive. He is entertaining, but he's also delivering vital information, true information, and giving us something to think about and a new perspective on things that we might otherwise not really question in our lives. So it's lovely to have you here. We've got LJ and Frank and Anna and Timmy and Mr. Anthrope over on YouTube. And it's pretty quiet on Odyssey and Rumble at the moment, but it could pick up, right? So wonderful. And yeah, Mr. Anthrope is saying, it's so funny that the chemtrails conspiracy is now realized to be true. Had to laugh. I'm going to be talking about that on tonight's preamble. It kind of aligned with what I was reading and researching, so we are going to mention that. But thank you for bringing that up. It is true. It is funny indeed. The number of people who've been talking about it for how long? I'm thinking about Alan Watt in particular, talked very often about the spraying and his observations of what it did to the clouds and the weather and where he lived in Canada. He was doing that for a long time. I think he said he started in the 90s. And now they're just admitting it in the mainstream papers and saying, okay, yes, we are doing it, and it's a good thing. And you should be glad we're doing it. And we're going to have a good bit of learning tonight around the context. We're going to come up with maybe you might, this was a new term for me that I found while I was sort of prepping for this. So we got a useful term that we're going to look at that I think is a good one to use with regards to the agenda that we're living through and we're seeing unfold in real time. We got Plutonium Productions as well. Hope you're doing all right. Plutonium Productions is off to listen to our reading of The Open Conspiracy, which was the first book we read on the channel. And I'll mention as well, anybody new here, anybody checking in who's not familiar with the channel, if you go to the playlists tab on my YouTube or Rumble or Odyssey, you can see the previous books that we've read through in full. The one we're reading tonight, Endgame, this is the 11th book that we've read on the channel. So we've done quite a lot of resources there. And the first book we ever did was The Open Conspiracy by H.G. Wells. And then we went on from there to cover Bertrand Russell and the history of the Rockefeller Foundation and the Fabian Freeway. And we also did The Next Million Years. We did a Geo Griffin book about the UN, and we did the Milner-Fabian Conspiracy by Johan Ratiu. We've covered some incredible books. We've got even more incredible books to cover in the future. And so that's what we're here. That's what we're doing. And I'm very grateful to you all for tuning in and checking it out. So without any further rambling, we'll do the preamble ramble itself. So we'll go over here. And this is where we're going to be starting tonight. We are looking at bright green environmentalism. So did you know that there were different shades of green when it comes to, there isn't just environmentalism, there isn't just green environmentalism, there are different shades of green environmentalism within the environmentalism movement itself. I didn't know this. It's a term that came up while I was preparing one of the previous videos in this series, reading Endgame. And I bookmarked it for a future preamble ramble because I thought that sounds interesting. What's it all about? And tonight we're going to learn a little about this. Or at least this is where we're going to start. And it's pretty interesting. So, bright green environmentalism is an environmental philosophy and movement that emphasizes the use of advanced technology, social innovation, eco-innovation, and sustainable design to address environmental challenges. So, notice there's a big emphasis here on technology and specific kinds of technology, as we'll see. This approach contrasts with more traditional forms of environmentalism that may advocate for reduced consumption or a return to simpler lifestyles. So that's the bit that really stood out to me, because of course if we returned to some aspects of simpler lifestyles, that would solve a whole lot of our problems. If we returned to growing our own food, to making our own clothes and repairing them, to actually having skills of maintenance and repair and upkeep for the places where we live, for the land that we may have, if we're very lucky and blessed enough to have a garden or a little patch of dirt that grows things in it, right? The skills needed, the many people used to possess to tend those little areas, to repair things, to build things, to create things, to make things last a long time, those have all basically been bred out of us at this point. So I think there is something to be said for looking to the past and seeing what skills have lost that we could bring back in. Things like fermenting food, or learning how to store food over the long term, or even just batch cooking, for example. I know people still do that nowadays, but the art of cooking a lot of food with a little, making it nutritious, making it go a long way, it's all kind of slipping away through our hands as we march forward on this march of progress. And so this bright green environmentalism is really just looking to the future. It's kind of like there's no going back. onward now. All we can do is innovate and throw as much money as we can into research and development and keep going forward and just hope and pray that some sort of technological breakthrough will save us all from ourselves. That's kind of the gist of it. But what's the origin of this movement? Well, it was coined in 2003 by Alex Steffen. Bright green environmentalism aims to provide prosperity in an ecologically sustainable way through the use of new technology and improved design. So remember that the goal is prosperity. And that's going to be important when we're thinking about, okay, 2003, this idea came up. It's 2025 now, so it's sort of 22 years later. Are we experiencing more prosperity? Oh, I don't know. Maybe some of us are. Maybe some of us are not. It's going to depend on each of our individual circumstances, but prosperity is the goal, allegedly. So, proponents promote and advocate for green energy and electric vehicles, efficient manufacturing systems, bio and nanotechnologies, ubiquitous computing, and dense urban settlements, closed-loop materials, cycles, and sustainable products designs. So we've actually got a lot of this stuff already, right? I mean, we've got electric vehicles now. Are we feeling more prosperity and enjoying more prosperity in our lives thanks to the electric vehicles and the Teslas silently, ominously gliding up and down our streets? You know, we got a fair bit of green energy on the go. I was looking earlier, apparently around 33% of Britain's electricity is produced by wind. So we've got green energy. Are we all feeling the prosperity of that? You know, we've certainly got ubiquitous computing. I mean, I've spoken many times about the amount of people that are, you know, just sitting at home with their laptops, slapping their keyboards all day, calling it work. And I'm one of those people. And I'm not saying that there is nothing valuable that can be done by slapping a keyboard or a laptop. I'm being a bit facetious. But we have ubiquitous computing. We're all walking around with smartphones in our pockets. We are walking around with technology in our pockets that didn't exist when we went to the moon, allegedly. So the technology that we have technology in our pockets that's better than the technology that took us to the moon. And yet, are we experiencing more prosperity because of that? I'll leave that for you to decide. And those of us in dense urban settlements, maybe you're in high rises and city centers, paying out your ass for a little box in which you can exist, so you can be close to the office, so you can get in there early and impress the boss and take him a donut and be there, first one through the door and the last one there at night. Good on you, by the way, if you are doing that and really trying to, you know, graft and move up and move forward in the world. But in a dense urban settlement, are you experiencing more prosperity? When I go into the densest part of the nearest urban settlement, I see a lot of homeless people. I see a lot of poor people, beggars, a lot of people who aren't from here walking around, a lot of different languages. It doesn't look to me to be the most prosperous place. There's derelict, boarded up shop fronts and buildings. There's buildings falling apart. There's new buildings going up, but they're disgusting and hideous and ugly and made out of glass and steel, and they kind of look like a glitch in a computer game on the landscape. But dense urban settlements, are they bringing us prosperity? So we're kind of already seeing the effects of some of this bright green environmentalism, I would argue. But continuing, it says, their principal focus... Oh, sorry, I missed a bit. One planet living is a commonly used phrase for bright green environmentalists. One planet living. So live as though there's only one planet. You ain't going to Mars, my friend. Elon is not inviting you on that particular trip. You only got one planet. So I think they're trying to hammer that message home. Also, the idea of one planet is one planet, one culture, one human family, one way of life, one language, one truth, one religion, one economic system, one financial system, one way of eating, one way of conducting your raising family, raising children. You know, it's feeding into this homogenization of everything under a one world system of control, ultimately. But one planet living kind of complements that very nicely. It's probably just a coincidence, though. But their principal focus is on the idea that through a combination of well-built communities i.e., you all live in high rises. New technologies, well, I think we all had a good dose of the kind of new technologies they want to roll out over the last 5 years. Well, some of us did. Some of us had multiple doses. And sustainable living practices, of course, you must live sustainably. If we do all that, then the quality of life can actually be improved. Ooh, what a novel concept, improving the quality of life, even while ecological footprints shrink. So that's the argument, that's the goal, and that is what they're trying to achieve. I've just noticed over here they've got green Zionism and queer ecology, of course. They all come under different. These are all parts of the series on green politics. But yeah, you got green Zionism and queer ecology as well, complementary. I didn't see those before I went live, otherwise I might have looked at those. There's also green anarchism. But yeah, they're there if you want to have a look at them. But we'll continue with this particular article for now. There's a quote which is worth looking at. This is from Arnie Cooper in 2010. And it's from the Sun newspaper. It says, we'll see global population peak at something like 9 billion people. If you believe the figures, I mean, it boggles my mind that we're supposed to believe the human population can be counted accurately. Maybe it can in this day and age with the internet. I don't know. But we'll see it peak at 9 billion. Many of those people will want a European lifestyle at least. And they will see escaping poverty as their non-negotiable right. But to deliver that prosperity at our current levels of efficiency and resource use would destroy the planet. Not once, not twice, but many times over. So this is like this is like on a computer game where you kill someone and you bring them back to life to kill them again, and back to life to kill them again. You know, where you have these gratuitous, over the top finishing moves on certain computer games, like Mortal Kombat springs to mind, where it just is so outrageously, ridiculously over the top that, you know, it's kind of cartoonish is what I'm trying to say. So we're going to destroy the planet, not even once, just many, many, many times. And that reminds me of a quote from a hilarious comedy film, which I can't remember right now, but he says to the character, "I'll kill you until you die from it." So it's that kind of thing. It's bordering on comedy. And this quote says, this person says, we need to invent a new model of prosperity, and we can't do that without embracing technology and better design. Right? So it's all about technology. But of course, you and I do not get to choose which technology, because of course technology has many forms, and there's many different technologies and ways it could be developed and rolled out and given to people and used to benefit people and help us achieve certain ends and certain means. No, we don't get a say in any of that. It's the big tech corporations, it's the governments and the government funding, it's the flow of money, loans that are granted and grants that are given out. And foundations, of course, they're very key and important as well. And that is what dictates which technologies get brought into existence. So there's kind of a part of the question here, which is left out of this article, is not all technology is good, not all of it's bad, but it's being painted here as if every technological advancement is good, and all research and funding and effort into developing technology is good, because it's trying to help us save the planet from ourselves. Okay, within bright green environmentalism, you've got dark greens, light greens, and bright greens. So there's three factions within this faction, which is a faction itself of the broader environmental movement. So, you know, circles within circles within circles. But there's light green. The light green environmentalists focus on environmentalism as a lifestyle choice. So this is probably your vegetarians and your vegans, your people who are very keen on recycling and riding their bikes everywhere. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. I'm not putting it down. I'm just trying to paint a picture of who the light greens are likely to be. There's a distinction which says this is different from the term light green, L-I-T-E, green, which some environmentalists use to describe products or practices they believe are greenwashing. So don't get those two mixed up. But the light greenies are really just looking at the individual's choices in their lives. Then there's the dark greenies. And the dark greenies, in contrast, believe that environmental problems are an inherent part of industrialized, capitalist civilization. And of course, I don't think that about capitalism, but you do hear a lot of that anti-capitalist rhetoric in this sort of context. And they also seek radical political change. So what does that make? What does that sound like to you? Communist much? It sounds like communism to me. They think the problems are inherent in industrialized capitalist civilization. Yeah, it sounds like, and they want radical change. Sounds like communism. Dark greens believe that currently and historically dominant modes of societal organization inevitably lead to consumerism, overconsumption, waste, alienation from nature, and resource depletion. There's some truth in that. Of course there is. You know, there are certain products that we have which require minerals and metals which are mined by way of slave labor. There's no getting around that. Alienation, of course, does lead to is a result of the modern way of life, the modern lifestyle, and the way we are organized socially. Absolutely, and consumerism, overconsumption, that's happening in some places by certain people, right? So there is some truth in this. That's what makes it so alluring. But the problem is that they'll blame capitalism as a not capitalism as the system that we have, but I mean capitalism as a concept of a system, i.e. the free market, back and forth, voluntary buying and selling of products and services, right? With no intervention, no regulation. That's kind of the pure model of capitalism, which has never been tried. We've never been free enough to give that a go. But they'll turn people away from that idea and fighting for it and pursuing it by saying, hey, look, we live in a capitalist system and look what it's doing to us all, and look at the mess. We need some more communism and socialism, right? So that's how this kind of dialectic works in that way. Dark greens claim this is caused by the emphasis on economic growth that exists within all ideologies, a tendency sometimes referred to as growth mania. So this fetishization of growth, right? You have to always make more money for the shareholders, and the people who invest need a return on their investments. And first and foremost, this is what all the systems are designed to provide. And any benefit that befalls the average Joe and Jane in the street that comes out of the system is really just kind of an incidental thing. It's like you're lucky you got that, because the system is not designed to provide that and to do that. The system is designed to make sure that the people who set it up, the people who run it, who put their money into it, the people who control the money, create the money, and hand out the money, get a return on their investment. So there's something to that idea as well, really, this idea of economic growth. Continuing, it says the dark green brand of environmentalism is associated with ideas of ecocentrism, deep ecology, degrowth, anti-consumerism, post-materialism, holism, the Gaia hypothesis of James Lovelock, and sometimes a support for a reduction in human numbers and or a relinquishment of technology to reduce humanity's effect on the biosphere. So there's a lot in there, but I think you'll agree that what we tend to be dealing with when we are presented with environmentalism, when we are told that we must have sustainable development, we must have Agenda 21 and all the goals and changes that go with it, net zero, etc., that this is really a dark green agenda, because it often involves degrowth. Like, I would argue that England, for example, where I live, is experiencing degrowth now. There's nothing being produced here. The economy is just kind of pushing pixels around economy. Everything's imported. We are hooked into international trade routes and lines. So we got to get things in. We got to send things out. We're not really producing much in this country that we need as a society. So we're hooked into that one world, one planet. What was it? One planet thinking. Let me go back up there and find it. One planet living. That's it. We are hooked into the one planet living. So degrowth in the sense that our nation is not self-sustaining, is not able to provide what it needs for itself and the people who live here. We are in the one planet living, and so that's what we're experiencing with loss of jobs, prices going up, property being unaffordable, rent prices going up, bills, everything's going up. The prices of things in this country are absolutely ridiculous at the minute. A good friend of mine, Newsfist, he's on YouTube, Rumble, and Entropy. He was saying that a pint of beer now in London is £8. And that's the same. That's like your bog standard, mass-produced, filled with chemicals, toxic, poisonous shit lager is £8 a pint, right? And you drive 4 or 5 hours north, and it's £4 a pint. The same toxic crap, but just that little drive that you did has given you a 50% saving. It's absolutely mental. Good evening, Hasdak. How are you doing? And Tammy as well. Hope you're all right. Just spotted you over on YouTube there. Hope you're doing well. So degrowth, anti-consumerism. So telling people that you shouldn't be greedy. You shouldn't make money and have a comfortable life for yourself and be entrepreneurial and start a business. No. We want you accepting only what the government decides you can have, right? And that's kind of where it's going. But what is also interesting is this, the Gaia hypothesis of James Lovelock. Now, if you remember, the previous book we read on the channel was Sustainable Prince by Joan Vion, and it was all about the king formerly known as Prince Charles. And in that, there was a whole section on the Gaia hypothesis and James Lovelock and how he influenced Prince Charles back when he was a prince, and his thinking and his sort of philosophy and worldview and love of animals and organic farming and all these kinds of things. So very interesting to see it here as well, associated with the dark green side of the bright green environmentalism. So I guess we're talking about bright, dark green environmentalists. bright green environmentalists. I think that's what they're going to have to be known as, isn't it? And then, of course, reduction in human numbers. They just slip that in there. You notice that they make a huge list. And then in there, they're like, yeah, we got to kill some people, and we got to ruin the economies of the people who live in the wealthier countries. And we got to also worship the earth, according to James Lovelock. And then, right, so just casually throw that in there. And get past materialism and then consumerism, which is, of course, a kind of linked to communist ideology as well, right? But there is a contrast between the light and the dark green, which this distinction can be summarized as no technology versus no technology. Get it? No technology, K-N-O-W, versus no technology, N-O. So the idea is that one side wants to go headfirst into technology, believing that it will save us, and the other side is saying maybe we got to do less of that and halt the growth and the expansion and the acceleration of technology, and presumably go back to, I don't know, living in clay huts or something. But then the bright green, this is another. I don't know if this contains both the light greens and the dark greens, or if it's a separate group. But the bright greens emerged as a group of environmentalists who believe that radical changes, there's that word radical again, are needed in the economic and political operation of society in order to make it sustainable. But that better designs, new technologies, and more widely distributed social innovations are the means to make those changes. Some have included open source technology as part of this new approach. So I like that. I think open source technology makes a lot more sense, right? Because if you were really committed to this concept, this idea, then you would be empowering everybody to grow their own food. Everyone who had space, you would be giving out greenhouses. You would be teaching food cultivation in schools, providing seeds to children, showing them how to work with nature through the seasons to look after and grow a plant and then harvest the seeds and then have this never-ending, abundant source of food that they could control and benefit from, and it would improve their health, which would mean they wouldn't have to rely so much on the NHS and healthcare and all these. They would be pushing that. and everybody would know and have this knowledge of how to grow food, how to grow plants, how to look after them, maybe even how to keep some animals as well. That would be true environmental sustainability. If you could all produce most of what you needed, and at the very least had a community around you where among you could produce everything everybody needed and just trade and swap and barter for the bits of things that you couldn't do yourself that your neighbor down the street could do. And setting up those kinds of little networks. But that's not what they're doing. Of course, it's not. What they're actually doing is centralizing control and having AI, algorithmic control over decision-making and access and all this massive data gathering and harvesting, analysis and surveillance of everything all the time to make sure that people are sitting at home, staring at their screens, not going out, not being productive, not making friends with their neighbors, not checking in on their elderly relatives, not building strong communities that can pool their resources and be independent of mummy and daddy government, right? They're making sure you're not doing that. So they're telling you that it's because they care about the environment and sustainability, and it's all about bright green, dark light environmentalism, but it's not. This whole thing itself is a kind of greenwashing, I think. But there's a few other pages here that I went through that sound pretty interesting. One of them is eco-innovation, and that's development of products and processes that contribute to sustainable development, which of course is a UN created movement that is designed to centralize control and bring us closer to a sort of one world government. I mean, UN, means one, right? As Alan Watt points out. There's a post-scarcity economy, which is a situation in which all goods are available, all free of charge. That sounds pretty good. That sounds kind of like the way it should be, but I bet we will never see that happen. There's Prometheanism, which is an environmentalist term, which I didn't get a chance to check that out. But I would like to know more because Prometheus is a very important figure, very interesting. James Tunney does an excellent video on Prometheus and the relevance of that figure to the mythology and the thinking of the useless eliters, the parasite class that are running these scams on us today. So I'd like to know how Prometheanism links to this environmentalist movement. And then down here, the other one that stood out to me was Technogaianism, which is a favor of technology to fight environmental threats. And I'm like, Technogaianism? That's the one I want to know more about. So that's what we're going to have a look at now. So, and I'll just say hello to the Outsiders Outlier over on Odyssey. Hope you're doing well. Who's getting a bit outraged at the fact that a pint cost £8, saying that is some serious monetary devaluation. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And the only real solution is to make more money, unfortunately, which is what a lot of people don't like to hear and don't like to do. And because it's complicated and it's hard and and it requires a lot of work. And most people associate making money with a requirement to compromising on their values, their ethics, their integrity, and their morals. I'm the same. I have received this sort of programming which says if I want to make money and do well in life, then I'm going to have to be cutthroat. I'm going to have to be ruthless. I'm going to have to be willing to step on people, to elevate myself, to play that game, to do better in life. And that's not actually true. I think that is a piece of self-sabotage software that's been implanted in our minds, in my mind, that I'm trying to unpick and overcome these days. And it's tricky and it's quite frustrating because it's a bit of a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back type thing. But it's worth doing because there are moral, ethical ways to make money. There is a way to do it with integrity, and there's a way to do it where you are creating genuine win-win situations for you and the customer or the client that you're working with. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Technogaianism. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure. It doesn't really give you any pronunciation key on here. So it's Gaia is the middle bit, and it's Technogaianism. Technogaianism. So it's got to be how you say it, right? There's a little warning. This article may be unbalanced toward certain viewpoints. Please improve the article. I mean, are they asking me to improve the article? Or I don't know if that little note there is aimed at the CIA or or the GCHQ or FBI or what or whoever, MI6 maybe, MI5, who's running this particular intelligence operation, but I certainly won't be improving this article. But Technogaianism, what is it? It's a bright green environmentalist stance of active support for the research, development, and use of emerging and future technologies to help restore the Earth's environment. So when they say restore the Earth's environment, remember the narrative, remember the story that we're told, which might be true. I don't know. I don't have a time machine and I can't check. But once upon a time, there was nothing. And then there was an explosion. And then gradually, randomly, chaotically, everything we now know and see and experience on a daily basis, self-organized, without any intelligent force directing it or designing it. That's a narrative that's out there about how we came to be where we are today. The idea, so when they say restore the Earth's environment, my question is to when, right? You know when your laptop crashes and you can do like a system restore and you've got a point in the past where I last made a reboot point back in November 2024, and you can restore your system to that point in time. I don't know if people do that. I used to do it, and it used to frustrate me no end when I hadn't made a decent backup and I had to go back like a year or two. Don't worry, I think Windows are going to fix that so that everything you ever do is recorded and you'll have instant replay and rewind. I think that's what they're working on in this latest iteration of the Windows operating system. There's a kind of everything is recorded and algorithmically captured, and therefore nothing will ever be lost again, ever. Which reminds me a little bit of that Police song, "Every breath you take, every step you make, I'll be watching you," right? So when it says restore Earth's environment, it's like, to when? To when do you want to restore it? Where do you want to take it back to? And I often have the feeling that they want to take it back to like before humans, whatever it was like back then, like the dinosaur age, before we came along and messed everything up because we're so messy and greedy and horrible and shit, So that just what do you think? Restore Earth's environment to what? To when? To which time exactly? And there's the picture of the most beautiful, tranquil, incredibly attractive waterfall that you've ever seen to illustrate the word environment. Not a picture of a desert, or a frozen mountaintop. It's just a barren moor. It's like paradise. The environment is paradise, but only when humans aren't in it. That's kind of the subtle messaging there, isn't it? Anyway, what's the philosophy of Technogaianism? Well, Technogaianists argue that technology gets cleaner and more efficient with time, not necessarily progressing to the detriment of the environment. Well, I think that's a pretty good argument. I think, it's half of it, isn't it? We could develop clean and efficient technology. That is possible. That is doable. That could be funded and dished out to the people. It's not by design, by choice. Okay. So it's kind of a moot point they're saying here. They're saying it's not that technology always gets cleaner and more efficient. It's like it could if the people who fund and control what technology gets given to us wanted that to happen. So it really is lacking a sort of, I think, big picture view of the way things work. But they continue with an example, which is hydrogen fuel cells. I don't know much about those. I have no idea if they're actually any good or not. More directly, they argue that such things as nanotechnology, oh yippee, and biotechnology, oh great, can directly reverse environmental degradation. Molecular nanotechnology, for example, it might, it may, it's a possibility, convert garbage in landfills into useful materials and products. This gave me a laugh because landfill is made up of useful materials and products. At least we're told they're useful. aren't we? When they're being advertised, when there's a sale on Black Friday, on Amazon, on recommended products for you, on every single, pretty much every single corner of the internet you care to visit, we're told, oh, these are useful materials and products, but then they end up in landfills. They become garbage. And what is the point at which useful materials and products become garbage? You know, it's because you design them to be throwaway, to be single use, to be cheap, and to have built-in obsolescence so that you can continually sell and upsell and add more and get the next one and get the next thing, because the ones you get break after a year or they don't work properly. And that's by design. They are designed to do that. So all the garbage in the landfill is there by design. And the idea that we need to heavily invest in molecular nanotechnology so that we can set forth these tiny little robots. You remember that film WALL-E? Set forth these little robots and they'll go in there and they'll pull it to bits and they'll put it back together and make something useful out of it. This is just hilarious to me because it is so backwards. Because the answer, obviously, is make long-lasting, durable products that the people who buy them know how to repair, and then provide the means by which they can carry out self-repairs at home. That is so obviously the answer to these problems, right? You should just buy one washing machine, and then that's the washing machine that you and your family have for a few generations. Same with fridges, same with, there's no reason why these things can't be built to last. They used to be built to last. If you look at like old refrigerators, there's some of those things that are still in use in the present day. Melissa was telling me that she has an air conditioning system 50 years old. Now it's starting to clap out a little bit now, but machines and objects and tools and devices and there's another word that I'm looking for, appliances that last a long time, that would be the solution. And there's no reason why we can't create those and dole them out and dish them out to people. So it's kind of it just makes me laugh because it's this man-made, it's this problem that's been engineered, and it happens like that by design. And it's used as an excuse to fund all this nanotechnology development, which, what that kind of stuff gets used for. You've heard all the rumors, I'm sure. And then there's also biotechnology, which could lead to novel microbes that devour hazardous waste. Well, how about just not making the hazardous waste in the first place? So there's so many ways that this could be dealt with without having to go down the nanotech and biotech route. But nanotech and biotech is the goal, and the funding of it and the normalization of it is the goal, as you're going to see as we move through this. So Technogaianists argue that it has been in humanity's best interests to exploit the environment mercilessly until recently, following accurately to current understandings of evolutionary systems. So there's a little explanation here of current understandings of evolutionary systems, which says, when new factors such as foreign species or mutant subspecies are introduced into an ecosystem, they tend to maximize their own resource consumption until they reach an equilibrium or they become extinct. So what is being described here is humanity's effect on the planet. So there's an evolutionary system here, allegedly, and there's an ecosystem. Of course, you can walk outside and have a look at it. And then there's a foreign species or mutant subspecies getting introduced. That's me and you in this analogy, in this explanation. And then we're going to either reach an equilibrium beyond which we cannot go, or we're going to become extinct. That's what this little bit is telling us. That's the philosophy of a technogaianist, that human beings are foreign species or mutant subspecies that do not belong here and are upsetting the delicate balance of the ecosystem. And so in these models, this bit was very interesting. It says, in these models, it is impossible for such a factor to totally destroy its host environment. But wait a minute. Didn't you tell us in the last tab that we were going to destroy the planet? many times over. Not even just once, but even like multiple destructions. But apparently the models say that it's actually impossible for us to totally destroy the host environment, which I think is actually true. It is more true, because we would just get wiped out first. You know, we might cause whatever events or famines or run out of water, clean water, or just nuke each other. But the Earth is going to carry on being the Earth, whatever it is, whatever shape it is. You know, it's going to carry on rotating or being stationary or doing whatever it does once the humans are gone. So this like save the planet narrative is really just appealing to a ridiculous sense of importance and self-centeredness that some people have. So continuing, Technogaianists believe humanity has currently reached such a threshold, and that the only way for human civilization to continue is to accept the tenets of Technogaianism and limit future exploitive exhaustion of natural resources and minimize further unsustainable development, or face the widespread ongoing mass extinction of species. So they're the only two options we got, say the Technogaianists. They believe it's either we accept Technogaianism as our new religion and do exactly what it says and follow its tenets and its rules and its presuppositions and its beliefs about nanotechnology and biotechnology, or death. And as I read this sentence, it reminded me of one of my all-time favorite comedians and a quote of his, which I'm going to play for you because it's a really short one and it won't take I think it's less than 2 minutes. It's less than 30 seconds. And this quote is absolutely hilarious, but check it out. Wait a second. I have to unmute something and click a button properly and do this. Okay, try it again.
I don't know. Christianity's the weird one, though. You know, Christianity's such an odd religion, you know. I was raised that way, you know, and you can just suffer for it. You know, the whole image is that, you know, eternal suffering awaits anyone who questions God's infinite love. That's the message, isn't it, that we're brought with? Believe or die. Thank you for giving, Lord, for all those options.
I love that bit. It's one of my favorite Bill Hicks bits of all. And there's a lot of them. He was one of my favorite comedians for a very long time. And in fact, Bill Hicks was in many ways the first sort of truther, quote unquote truther, that started cracking my mind open to some of the mainstream lies, right? But what tickles me about that bit, and that's not to disparage Christianity. I know it's a gross oversimplification of the message of Christianity, and he's doing that on purpose for comedic effect. Hint, he's a comedian. But what reminds me of this is the same thing. It's believe or die. It is literally what it says here. It's accept the tenets of Technogaianism or face ongoing mass extinction. Believe or die. So, you know, when a movement or an organization or a group is giving you those two options, that they're up to something. That sets my spider sense off like nothing else. But continuing. Furthermore, Technogaianists argue that only science and technology can help humanity be aware of and possibly develop countermeasures for risks to civilization. So technology and science, like that is it. It's not the scientific method. It is not the widespread use of analytical, logical, critical thinking given out to everybody. It's a small class of people with white coats and clipboards who roll out a computer model and a graph from time to time and say, the science has spoken, believe and trust in the science, and science says you must ... You know, and again, technology, it's whose technology, what technology, who's funded it, where's it come from? You know, in the case of the internet, it's a military funded technology. It was created for the purposes of counterinsurgency. That is documented in this book, which I have right here, Surveillance Valley, Yasha Levine, right? You got to check that book out if you haven't read it. It's fantastic. It's like 300 pages long. It's easy to read, incredibly well referenced, but tells that whole story. So believe or die And if you believe, because you don't want to die, then you have to believe in science and technology. So, we're kind of living in a Technogaianist system, I think. I think it was Technogaianism which enabled the Big C event to roll out so successfully, because we heard a lot of believe in the science and trust the science, and those people who don't want to wear a cloth on their face are anti-science, right? We heard a lot of that. So Technogaianist, that's kind of what we're living in and what we're living through. I think it fits. But continuing down here, we got the methods. So what are the methods of Technogaianism? And you will not be surprised to see that first one is environmental monitoring. So that's data gathering, that's surveillance, that's cameras everywhere, sensors everywhere. That is the linking of all of that data to systems such as financial systems, such as social systems, allowing people to do certain things depending on whether you've been a good boy or a good girl, and you've ticked all the boxes and you're behaving in the correct way, which the system says you must. Right? So you got to be monitoring everything all the time. So it's a panopticon type requirement there. And then the second method is geoengineering. Climate engineering, is a Technogaian method that uses two categories of technologies: carbon dioxide removal and solar radiation management. And then there's another thing here about earthquake engineering, which I'd never heard. And I just thought it was odd that they called it earthquake engineering, because it sounds like they're making earthquakes on purpose, which I have heard some people allege. I haven't looked into it. I don't know if it's true. But I have heard people allege that it is known how to engineer and create earthquakes. Wouldn't surprise me. If I was a psychopathic maniac with an unlimited budget that I didn't have to be accountable for, and I was into researching ways to, control the world's population, being able to create earthquakes would be a great weapon to have. So I do not doubt for 1 second that massive amounts of money, energy, expertise has been poured into the science of earthquake engineering. Not only how to avoid them and deal with them and track them, but also how to create them, for sure. That's what I think. That's my opinion. But geoengineering is right here. It's the second main method of Technogaianism. And they talk about solar radiation management. And this is, of course, relevant because it's been in the news, in the mainstream news. Finally, all those conspiracy theorists who've been aware of it and trying to talk about it and point it out for so long, it's finally a mainstream thing. And all the people who read it in the mainstream are going to be like, well, that's all it is. They're just trying to protect us from global warming. And then the third one is, of course, genetic engineering. Genetic engineering, not only of foods, which is mentioned down here, which have the reduced herbicide and insecticide needs, but also genetic engineering of, you got it, people. So we got a quote here from S. Matthew Lau, who's a professor of philosophy and bioethics. And bioethics is just the modern term for eugenics/dysgenics. And he's from New York University. He claims that the human impact on the environment could be reduced by genetically engineering humans to have a smaller stature, an intolerance to eating meat, and an increased ability to see in the dark, thereby using less lighting. So you're going to be nocturnal, skinny vegetarians. That's the future for humanity if these Technogaianists continue to roll out their plans and just carry on doing all this insane shit that they're doing. You're not even allowed to have light. When it's dark, you should be asleep anyway, right? Let's face it. The sun is enough light in a lot of places, apart from England in the winter where you get about 6 hours of daylight and you need to use your lights. But yeah, this is just hilarious to me. But, it's just openly admitted right here on this innocuous Wikipedia page. It's not a conspiracy document or book or publication of any sort, right? Yeah, Outsiders Outlier says, Egads, a nocturnal vegan hobbit. No thanks. Yeah, that's it. You're going to be a nocturnal vegan hobbit, whether you like it or not. You're going to be a golem. And you're going to be like, my precious. And you're just going to be eating, moss from the inside of the cave that you live in, or from the garden, or just bark off the tree. You're just going to be chewing tree bark. It's a great future they've got lined up for us, isn't it? Can't wait. But these 2 pages tell you a lot. Bright green environmentalism and Technogaianism includes, oops, I just did a strange zoomy thing there, includes the reduction of the number of humans on the planet. It includes genetically modified foods. It includes genetic engineering of humans to be intolerant to eating meat, the healthiest, most nutritious, most nutritionally dense food that you could possibly eat is high quality, organic, pasture raised, ruminant animal. That just is the way it is, at least in my understanding. And also the geoengineering. So it's all right here in these 2 pages, the plan. And this is kind of what we're living through. This is what we're going through, right? Technogaianism. So there you are. There's a new term. You can start throwing it around, impress your friends with a new ism. Make them feel dumb and stupid and belittle them because you know something they don't know. And then when they're like, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, you don't know what you're talking about, you should be like, well, I just read it on Wikipedia. Like, yeah, I'm sorry if you think Wikipedia is a source of crazy conspiracy theories, but here, Wikipedia says it. It's right there. I'm kidding. Don't belittle people. Don't make them feel stupid. You gotta communicate to people with love and compassion and patience and kindness and understanding and really love them for who they are and where they're at. And then just give them that next breadcrumb, that next seed, that next step when you can see that they're ready to take it. And if you know that person's never going to take another step in the direction of truth and understanding and knowledge of the world and the way it works, you got to make peace with that as well. And you still got to try and find it in your heart to love them the way they are and find a way to connect with them and just leave all this kind of stuff out of it. Because the human connection, the compassion, the kindness, the relationship, that ultimately is more valuable than changing somebody's stubborn ways, I think. But Technogaianism, there you are. And Bill Hicks reminds us that we have the option to believe or die. Great clip, that. And just to back up what we've been reading, The Telegraph published this. It was all over everything, everywhere the last few days. So I won't spend too long on it. But they did talk about experiments to dim the sun will be approved within weeks. So it's been decided. You don't get a say on it or in it. Do you want to dim the sun? Doesn't matter because it's been approved or it will be approved. And it's scientists. So remember, we gotta defer to science and technology in accordance with the tenets of Technogaianism. And so here they are, the scientists with their models and their white coats and their clipboards and their glasses. And I don't suppose they have clipboards now. They probably have iPads, which makes them even cooler, But they say that they are considering brightening clouds. And if they're considering it, it means they've already been doing it. If they're announcing it publicly, you can bet your bottom banana that they have already done all the experiments, and they've just reached a point where they got to admit it because it's so bloody obvious to anyone who looks up in the sky regularly that there are lines going across it all the time. Now, I don't know what those lines are made of, but they do tell you a little bit in this article. The government has greenlit these experiments. There's outdoor field trials which could include injecting aerosols into the atmosphere. It might. Well, we might inject aerosols into the atmosphere. It could happen. I'm not going to say it's not happening, and it's not going to happen. It could. That's a modal verb again. Or we could brighten the clouds to reflect sunshine. And this is because of runaway climate change. It's running away. And this is a new one for me, which is ARIA, the government's Advanced Research and Invention Funding Agency. Reminds me, if you change that I to a P, you get ARPA, which became DARPA in the USA. And ARPA are responsible for the creation of the internet. Once again, a plug, Surveillance Valley by Yasha Levine, if you want to know more about that. ARPANET. It was ARPANET first before it was the internet. So you got Aria here. It's also, I think Aria, it'd be interesting to know that the name. It's a name, isn't it? The origins of the name, the etymology, where it comes from, who it's associated with. But I have not done that research for this episode, I'm afraid. But we're spending £50 million on this project at a time where people are using food banks, when there's potholes in the roads everywhere. We've got 50 million to block out the sun, which is great. Mark Symes, he said there would be small, controlled outdoor experiments on particular approaches. This gave me a laugh as well. I mean, the amount of spraying that I've seen and the places that I've seen it and the how long I've been watching it, the fact that they'll come out and say small, controlled outdoor experiments is laughable, and you have to laugh. But he says we will be making clear when any outdoor experiments might be taking place. All right, that's good. So they're going to tell you. They're not just going to do it to you for decades and gaslight you when you point it out and then announce it as though it's a new thing. No, they'll tell you when they're doing it. Just like all those human experiments throughout history, Tuskegee experiments, Phoenix program in Vietnam, they always told the people when they were doing it. One of the missing pieces in this debate was physical data from the real world. Models can only tell us so much. Well, where was models can only tell us so much when we all got locked down for 2 fucking years on the basis of models? You know what I mean? Like, where was models can only tell us so much when they slaughtered tens of thousands of cattle because of a model that told us there was going to be a mad cow disease outbreak, right? Where was models can only tell us so much during any of these events, where massive decisions that impacted the lives of huge numbers of people negatively were taken on the justification of models. Oh, but now that it's geoengineering, now that it's dimming the sun for your benefit, models can only tell us so much. You know, we can only go so far with models. So we're going to have to actually spray the skies and dim the sun out to see what happens, because we got to find out, right? We're scientists. We need to know the results of the experiment. That's what we do. Just, it's infuriating and hilarious at the same time. But like I say, you got to laugh because it's just so fucking dumb. I'm sorry I'm swearing a lot tonight. Everything we do, so Frank read ahead a little bit there, safe by design. Everything we do is going to be safe by design, even though we don't know the outcome because the models can only tell us so much and we don't have any data from the real world, meaning we can't accurately model the experiments. We can't accurately design them because we don't have any real world data, but it's going to be safe. Those 3 sentences make absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever. And if you are content that this is a good idea and it's a good thing and your government loves you and they're doing this because they care about you, then I don't know. I don't have a comment. But don't worry, because it's going to be responsible research, including responsible research. That is literally the next sentence. We're absolutely committed to responsible research, including responsible research. And then they just put the word outdoor in the middle of the second repetition of responsible research. See what they did there? They just wrote responsible research twice and just put the word outdoor in the middle of it. I need to analyze more mainstream news articles. It's so fun. They are just so bad. He says we won't be funding the release of any toxic substances to the environment. Well, not like again, like all of the toxic shit that's in our environment because of governments and corporations working together to make sure that you are not allowed to buy anything from the supermarket unless it's wrapped in plastic. Are telling you, oh, don't worry, we won't release any toxic substances to the environment. I mean, if you just get in your car, drive down the motorway and look out the window, you'll see all the toxic substances that are allowed to be released into the environment. Coffee cups, Happy Meal boxes, like just plastic straws, cartons, everything, bottles tossed out the windows all the way down the highways of our country, right? But don't worry, because Professor Mark Symes says that when they spray the sky in order to block out the sun, they won't use any toxic substances because it's all safe by design. Brilliant. It's almost like this article's been written in order to give fodder to people like me who make videos about how dumb it all is. And I'll tell you as well that I didn't watch anyone else talking about this topic or reading these articles. They've been everywhere, all the suggested videos, and there's the headline, and I'm like, I don't even need to look at it. It just so happened that while I was looking at Technogaianism, geoengineering came up, and that's why I thought, okay, I'll pull up one of these articles and have a look at it for tonight's live stream. But yeah, it's so dumb. And then they got seeding cirrus clouds, which is another idea for geoengineering. So they're just using the word geoengineering now openly. And they say they are seeding cirrus clouds to allow more heat to escape. And this fella, Dr. Sebastian Eastham, he said, every time you fly, sulfur, which is naturally present in jet fuel, is jet fuel natural? Jet fuel's a man-made thing, right? I don't think you can, you don't just, I mean, I know it'll be probably largely based on petroleum and oil, which does come out of the ground, but jet fuel, I don't know. Surely they treat it and they do something to it. So to say something's naturally present in a man-made product just seems a bit, I don't know. Again, I think this is written with YouTube streamers in mind. This is written with Russell Brand in mind so that he can do his live stream every day, like on the thumbnail, to tell you this crazy stuff. Anyway, what he tells you here is that when you fly in a jet, sulfur is emitted, and this causes a small cooling effect. So, so now burning jet fuel is cooling. It's cooling the planet. So I'm sure this will be used as a justification when all the Davos lot and King formerly known as Prince and Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and the new one-eyed guy who's taken over from him, when they're flying around in their private jets, they'll be like, well, we're doing our bit to cool the planet because, don't you know, sulfur is released and it causes a cooling effect. And there's a little bit here about aircraft contrails caused accidental cirrus cloud modification, but in this case, accidentally causing rather than preventing or thinning cirrus clouds. So again, another fantastically written sentence, but they really want to hammer home it was accidental. So this is what you're going to hear now when this topic comes up in conversation with people who aren't paying us attention in the same ways that we are. They'll be like, well, all those lines that you've been seeing are just accidents. They're just cirrus clouds. Yes, but it's caused by aircraft contrails, and they're accidents. And yes, that's been happening, but it was caused accidentally. They're accidental cirrus cloud. It's accidental modification. Look, they've actually put accidental modification. And that explains that, and that hand waves it away. It's nothing to worry about because I read it on the Telegraph. It's genius. It's like so dumb that it's good. This points to the fact that it's theoretically possible to cool the planet with current technology, but there are many practical questions that would need to be answered before they could be done at scale. Sure. Experts of the Technogaian system that you are now living in are hopeful that if we are successful, we can scale up and implement this stuff within the next 10 years. So, phenomenal. What a hilarious piece of comedy. And then there's a similarly hilarious piece of comedy over on The Guardian. It's basically the same article, right? So this is a great example of how the illusion of a free media is maintained. Because The Guardian's like a left-leaning thing, and I think The Telegraph's like a right-leaning thing. I'm not sure. Let's have a look what we got. Donald Trump, Israel, Ukraine, royals. Yeah. Seems more right-leaning. Business. So Telegraph seems more right-leaning because on The Guardian you got climate crisis, Middle East, tech, globalism. Left-leaning, right? But they just published the same article, and they both refer to the same quote unquote expert, Mark Symes. But this one's a little more has more catastrophizing in it, because it's talking about how near we are to triggering tipping points and the collapse of vital ocean currents and giant ice sheets. And they talk about SRM, solar radiation management. And if you remember, those eagle-eyed viewers among you will recall that that's written right here under the Technogaianism Wikipedia page, solar radiation management. There it is under the geoengineering section. So we're dealing with solar engineering management, which is an aspect of Technogaianism. It says here that some scientists warn that starting to develop geoengineering could reduce the drive to tackle the root cause of climate emergency, which is the burning of fossil fuels. Dun, 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 dun. Can't be burning fossil fuels now. Here's the thing about fossil fuels. They might not be made of fossils. That's one thing about them. Two, they might be... what's the word? They might be, they might not deplete. They might be self-replenishing. There might be mechanisms underground within the earth which cause oil wells to refill. If you leave them alone for a little while, you come back and drill them again and boom, magic, it's refilled. What? That's crazy, Nick. That's crazy. What have you been smoking, Nick, to say such a thing as that? Everyone knows that's a load of hooey, hokum, baloney, bogus, bullshit. Well, that may be true. Everybody knows that, except for these two people. One is Lindsay Williams, who's an author and wrote this book, The Energy Non-Crisis. Now, I'll read I've read this little thing before on a live stream, but I'll read it again. In the year 1971, Lindsay Williams went to the state of Alaska to become an aviation missionary. Shortly after arriving in Alaska, Mr. Williams heard that oil companies were going to build the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline and that 25,000 pipeliners were going to converge on the state to build it. Mr. Williams consequently volunteered his services as chaplain on the pipeline. Shortly after becoming chaplain, Alaska Pipeline Service Company offered him executive status and invited him to sit in on their board meetings in an advisory capacity to help the relationship between management and labor. What he heard over the next 3 years' time would change his life. He learned that OPEC had nothing to do with the price of oil, but that the elite of the world controlled it. Mr. Williams knew he had to put into print what he saw and heard in order to inform the American people. His story is documented in The Energy Non-Crisis. Tiny little book. I got a copy right here. Little paperback from 1971. 146 pages, it says. Is that right? It's actually, no, it's more than that. You're looking more like 240 exactly. Okay. So I don't know where this print length information comes from, but it's wrong. Grab yourself a copy. Why don't you? It's only £244.99. Now, it wasn't that much when I bought it. It was way, way cheaper when I got it. And I was surprised. But in this book, Lindsay Williams talks about how it was known and discovered that certain oil wells would refill. You would pop them, you would get all the oil out, and then you would come back to them later, and there would be more oil in them again. And how this was known, and how it was covered up and kept secret. Now, this might not be true for all oil fields everywhere all the time, but it's at least true for some of them in some places some of the time. And Lindsay Williams wrote this book about it. Now, it's one that I would like to read on the stream sometime, but won't be anytime soon because we've got to read Zbigniew Brzezinski's book first after we finished Vernon Coleman's. But I just wanted to put it on your radar, let you know that the price of that is going up. I should dig up. I've had that for a couple of years now. I should dig up the receipt to find out how much I paid for it. It was definitely nowhere near that amount. But that's how much it is now. But if you want a more affordable option, you might go for The Deep Hot Biosphere, The Myth of Fossil Fuels by Thomas Gold. Now, I haven't read this one, but I'm aware of it by way of a very good friend of the channel and show, and of me personally, which is AJ. He runs the Open Minds Inc. chat and broadcast group channel That's the word I was looking for, on Telegram. And he told me about this book, The Deep Hot Biosphere, The Myth of Fossil Fuels. Apparently this is a really, really good one. Change your whole understanding and your view on fossil fuels and what they are. And you can grab a copy of that for less than 20 quid. Much more affordable. And I plan to grab a copy at some point. You can see I've got it up here in my basket, along with something here about babies. 2 books about babies, in fact, because I've got a baby coming soon, so I've got to buy loads of books about babies. It's a great excuse to buy more books. So we'll go back. So that's what I got to say on this this bit here about the root cause of the climate emergency being the burning of fossil fuels. Well, probably a lot of BS. But the article goes on talking about Mark Symes and makes exactly the same points. What do you know what was missing? Real world physical data, because the models can only tell us so much. It's literally exactly the same quote here. So this shows you how this guy, Mark Symes, his little blurb, his quote, his words were sent out to these different newspapers, and then they are tasked with incorporating that information into their story, and they have their individual writers. Well, I barely muted it in time then before I sneezed. I just about got there and held my sneeze long enough to not blow your eardrums out. Quite proud of myself for that. Excuse me. So, Mark Symes, he's the talking point. Here's the quote from him. That gets sent out by the news agencies, such as Reuters, and there's only 3 news agencies or something like that, 3 or 4, a very small amount, sends out the story and the talking points and the quotes to all the individual ones, all the ones on the left, the left and the right, because they're totally different, aren't they? And then the same information gets published in both. So both sides, the left and the right, are reinforcing the same consensus view of reality, which is that there's a climate emergency and that fossil fuels are to blame, and that in order to do something about it, we need to run some real-life experiments. But don't worry, they're safe by design, says Professor Mark Symes, who no one's ever heard of. But he's leading the ARIA program, and that's a program funded by governments, therefore it must be good and trustworthy. But yeah, it's basically the same story on a left-leaning outlet. But there is a bit of criticism, which is surprising here, which some senior scientists say that ARIA's program is a dangerous distraction and calls SRM barking mad and akin to treating cancer with aspirin. The implication there being that, of course, everyone knows you need full-scale, aggressive chemotherapy to treat cancer. Everyone knows that, right? What are you, a conspiracy theorist who thinks you can cure it with lifestyle changes and healthy food? You crazy wacko. But at least there's a kind of acknowledgement of a bit of pushback, somebody calling this barking mad, which it is. But then making that, most people will go, that they'll think the senior scientist who said that is barking mad when they read that second part of that comparison there about treating cancer with aspirin, right? A 10 million program of geoengineering research was announced. So yeah, they're pouring a lot of money into this. And it goes on, and there's more you can say here. But that's The Guardian, and I don't want to waste any more of your valuable, precious life looking at The Guardian. So there's The Deep Hot Biosphere. There's a book you might want to grab. And there's The Energy Non-Crisis, another book you might want to grab. You might be able to get it cheaper than Amazon somewhere else if you shop around a bit. Try bookfinder.com. Another resource, that's a great place to pose it, isn't it? Another resource is a show that I did quite a while ago on this channel. And I say quite a while ago, it was streamed live on the 20th of January, 2024. And this is the Green Queen, the Climatriarch. And in this, I went through a whole bunch of news articles from a variety of different sources, talking about environmentalism and doing what I just did there, but for a whole 3 hours. But I did look at quite a good range of sources on this, and I referenced a lot of books. And I talked somewhere about the Lindsay book, and I dropped in some documentaries, and I think I did at the end like a full reading as well of Ian Davies' maybe it wasn't this one. But that's another resource. It's got all the links in the description of everything that I looked at. It's all right there. I did look at Ian Davis. He's got a 3-part series on climate science, which is fantastic. He's really good. So that's a resource you can check out and have a look at as well if you got a bit of time. I really like doing those articles, these style of shows back in the day, but I changed it at some point to do the book readings, and that's where we are. Now I'm doing kind of a mixture of the two, you know. So another thing that I want to mention to you and put on your radar is, did you know that James Corbett has a book and it is called Reportage, and it is out now and you can buy it? Did you know that? If you didn't know that, then you should know that, and I would like to encourage you to consider going to buy yourself a copy. I recently had the distinct honor and pleasure of chatting with James about the book. I read some quotes. I asked him to explain some of the concepts, and he did so with eloquence, with wit, vim, vigor, and verve, all in the way that only Corbett can. You know, I thought he did excellently, and it was a great honor to spend this time with him. And the reason I mention it, and I mention the book, is because there is a part in this book, and it is one of the essays. It is called "Who Controls the Environmental Movement?" Who controls the environmental movement? And this is a very important dive into the environmental movement, who funds it, who's pushing it, the foundations involved, the influential geopolitical players. And what he finds is that what he found through his research is that there is a link between the origins of the environmental movement and eugenics. It's very closely linked. They basically come from the same place. So that is another resource that I would like to put on your radar, is the book and also the interview, because I asked him about this and he gave his sort of summary of what he discovered. I just thought that interview came out really well. Nothing to do with me, all to do with James. He's a great guy. He knows his topics. I didn't tell him what I was going to ask him beforehand. I was like, hey, I want to talk to you about your book. He said, yep, I'll be there. We got on the call. He said, I've got about 50 minutes. I said, cool. And then I just hit him with question after question after question. And he knocked every single one of them out of the park. Every single answer. There was even one I asked him about television flicker rates. And he paused for a minute and he was like, I don't have the exact reference to my, oh, wait, I do have it. And he just dug it up and he told us the exact reference that he was, it was like a study done in the 60s about the effects of television flicker rates, right? I mean, I was so impressed. I think the interview is good, but I think the book is even better. So please consider getting yourself a copy. It's reportagebook.com to grab it. This is the first edition. So, you know, if it goes well and he makes future editions, it's always nice to have the first one. And I'll just read as well a quote, a quick quote from the relevant section of the book, right? So we'll go over here. So you can see, let's just go back to the start of this. This is Who Controls the Environmental Movement. And the quote I want to read is just this bit here. The environmental movement has always been steered by racists, eugenicists, and elitists. So there you are. That is all you need to know about that. But yeah, James Corbett, real honor to talk to him. And I think you'll enjoy that if you enjoy good, hard work, investigative reporting explained in a way that is entertaining, engaging, and coherent. So that pretty much brings us to the end of tonight's Preamble Ramble. That's a sexy new pronunciation of Preamble Ramble that I'm trying out. Let me know what you think in the comments. So this is the part of the video where I tell you thank you sincerely for your support, your encouragement, for your attention, for being here, for commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing. All very much appreciated. And you can go to allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you want to click on links that are connected to me and the work I do. That's basically what you get to do there. There's a variety of things on those links. I've talked them through many times before. You can shoot me an email. You can listen to my album. You can watch me on the various places that I stream. Follow me on the socials. Send donations. You can send some crypto over. And you can also download my guitar music bundle. That's 3 hours of original, not to be found anywhere else guitar music. And also you can have a look at my community, my online community, which is called Deviced, where I'm helping people with screen addiction. And if you click that top link there, it'll take you to something that looks like this. And this is inside the community. When you're a member, this is the view that you'll have. If you're not a member, you'll see this. I just uploaded some new testimonials so you can listen to people that I've worked with, the kind of results I'm getting with them. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you can join the community and get involved. Why would you want to do that? Because in the classroom, we have got a podcast where we interview various people in the community about topics such as addiction, habit change, free and open source software, holistic health. We've got a deep dive into the causes of technology addiction. And then we've also got an amazing wide-ranging discussion here on the subconscious mind and how it drives habits. That's sitting there waiting for you to dive in and start listening. There's a whole mini course here with 24 ways to beat screen addiction. And then there are also book club replays of 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television and Surveillance Valley by Yasha Levine. It's a whole lot of stuff, and it's a whole lot of free. So grab it, get in there, take advantage of it. The other thing you can do is hop onto the calendar, and you can find here links to meetings. I host group calls for anyone in the community to get on, talk to me, talk to the other people in the community, get advice, get support, get encouragement, get resources, ask questions, get feedback. It is shaping up to be a wonderful place for well-meaning people who are open-minded, curious, skilled, experienced, and we're really building something special. The kind of people who show up are continuously inspirational for me, and I do my little bit to pay it back to them, and it's becoming a real beautiful place to hang out, and I love doing it. So we meet twice a week. I'm going to be revamping the weekly meeting schedule very soon. But that is Deviced. If that sounds good to you, then please consider joining up. As I mentioned, it is free. I did have it paid for a while, and then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make it free. I think that's the right move at this point in time. It might not be free forever, though. I will say that. And that is the end of tonight's Preamble Ramble, I think. Let me just double check. Yes, it is. Yes, it is indeed. So I hope you enjoyed that. We got Heidi over on Rumble. And we still got the Outsiders Outlier over on Odyssey hanging in there, saying that Deviced is Zygmunt Void approved. Yep. You will get to join Deviced. If you join Deviced, you will get to meet the Outsiders Outlier on a video call, and you will find out his or her real name. And you will see his or her, I'm trying not to give it away, wonderful face, and learn from his or hers incredibly vast life experience and wealth of knowledge, which, is priceless. It really is. So we got LJ and Tammy and Adamski all checking in on YouTube. We got Mr. Anthrope hanging in there. I thank you, Mr. Anthrope, for all your comments. I really appreciate it. You are adding loads to the chat tonight, and I'm sorry that I haven't been reading it all out as I go along, but I do appreciate you being here and contributing. Frank Lennon as well, still here, hanging in there. Hope you're doing well tonight, Frank. And we got another person here it looks like you're called Stars, but it's a strange font. I can't quite read it. Got to reduce that 0.04%, folks. I think that's in reference to the carbon dioxide in the air. Is it? Wonderful. I'm really glad to have you all here and taking part. And now is the time of the show where I take a sip and I bring the book cam into view, and we get to some reading. Please remember to head on over to vernoncoleman.com and support the author. He's gone to the trouble of creating this physical resource for people to learn from, and I think it deserves support and thanks by way of buying a copy. And in fact, you don't even have to go to Vernon Coleman's website to buy a copy. You can get it from Amazon. That's where I got my copy. No, I got my copy in Oxfam, but I got my copy of his other book about addiction from Amazon. So consider buying a copy and just preserving it, because this video series could get nuked at any time. It could be gone. And if he gets wiped out, what are you going to do? He's going to wait till some other bold schmuck comes along and starts reading to you? Or are you going to have a copy ready to read for yourself? Your choice. I know what I'd do. I wouldn't rely on anyone else. I'd stock up on books so that when the internet goes down, when it's deemed too dangerous because too many people are learning too much about the world and how it works, and they decide to pull the plug and lock us all out, we can say, well, screw you. I got all the books in my study anyway, so I still know what's going on. I'm still going to learn about it. Nothing you can do. Gives you a nice sense of defiance, right? So the first, so this is where we're at. We're at the letter B. And if you've watched the first part or the second part, you'll know that this book is written in alphabetical order, and it's not chapters. It is just a list of items with some explanation. And it's very entertaining. It's very witty. But it's really on point too. So it's kind of like you can have fun while you're being horrified at the true nature of reality. But you know, do it in a lighthearted way. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So the section we got to last time was billionaires, and we are picking up tonight with biofuels. So I'm just gonna see how's that lighting? Is that all right? Oh, that's a bit better, isn't it? There we go. So we're gonna start with biofuels. After I move my microphone. Biofuels. I never really understood why governments were so keen on converting food into fuel and promoting biofuels as an alternative to fossil fuels. But once you realize that it is Agenda 21 policy to reduce the global population, this policy becomes understandable. Biofuels are promoted to ensure that more people die of starvation. That reducing the population ties in with, the preamble tonight regarding Technogaianism and what was it? Bright green environmentalism. Dark bright green environmentalism. Okay, biomass. Most renewable energy is derived from biomass, which is the fashionable and acceptable name for wood. the stuff that really does grow on trees. The electricity which is obtained from biomass is obtained by burning the wood in power stations in exactly the same way that coal used to be burnt. In the UK, the biomass which is burnt in the power stations mostly comes from America. Trees are chopped down by the thousand and then turned into little pellets of wood. The pellets of wood are then put into diesel-powered lorries and taken vast distances to ports. The pellets of wood are then transferred from the diesel-powered lorries to large gas or diesel-powered ships. The large ships then sail across the Atlantic, if sail is what large modern diesel-powered ships are still said to do. And then the pellets of wood are unloaded from the diesel-powered ships and put into diesel-powered lorries. The diesel-powered lorries then take the pellets of wood to the power stations where the pellets of wood are burnt. Not surprisingly, the carbon footprint produced by burning biomass is massive, possibly higher than it would have been if oil, gas, or coal had been burnt. Much coal, remember, was dug out of the ground in the country where it was burnt. Yeah, see, that's what I was talking about earlier with regards to this concept and requirement of degrowth. Degrowth just means one world living, more reliance on international trade, imports, exports, and these systems of interdependency, which makes all of us vulnerable across the world, because you've only got security insofar as you can provide for yourself, your food, your clothing, your shelter, and it's safe and you can defend it and that sort of stuff. Our ability to do that and be self-sufficient and provide for ourselves that's taken away. And that's what I was saying makes sense to me when you talk about returning to prior ways of living or simpler ways of life. It's that part of self-sufficiency, of growing your own food, repairing your own stuff, of maintaining your appliances and your machines and your car and having them last a very long time, right? People used to do that stuff, believe it or not. They didn't all used to just live off Tesco meal deals. Anyway, since biomass is counted as renewable energy, the global warming cultists do not mind. Incidentally, the odd thing is that in the UK there are moves to ban the burning of wood in fireplaces in the home. Instead, home owners will be encouraged to use electricity obtained by burning wood in power stations. That is crazy level of hypocrisy. So the next section is birds and bees. The Earth constantly emits low-frequency waves, which birds use as a sort of compass to help them migrate. The massive increase in the amount of electromagnetic activity on the Earth, as a result of all the cell phones and cell phone towers, is having a damaging effect on bird migration, and the same thing is causing a collapse in the number of colonies of honeybees. Without birds and bees, the balance of nature will be irreversibly damaged. Bees in particular are essential for the pollination of trees, bushes and plants, and without them, many crops will fail. It's not surprising that birds have been seen attacking new cell phone towers. So again, this would be true environmentalism. It would be teaching people how to be beekeepers, teaching people how to manage their outdoor space to maximize the benefit to the wildlife and the bees and the small animals that live around and in those areas. It reminds me actually of something that Corbett wrote about in this essay and reportage, where he said that the link between sort of eugenics and environmentalism comes from the fact that the people who want to practice eugenics/dysgenics, they're very interested in the preservation of the big noble animals like the stags, right, and the lions and the elephants, these huge majestic creatures that are seen to be impressive and stately and royal and impressive and powerful. They don't give two hoots about the moles and the voles and the rats and the mice and the tiny little birds and the pigeons and the insects and the woodlouse and all those creepy crawly, like tiny little things that you can, step on if you want to, if you're a psychopathic maniac who likes stepping on small creatures. And that's one of the links that he makes in that essay that I mentioned earlier. So this kind of ties into Vernon Coleman's point here. True environmentalism would be showing everybody with a little bit of outdoor space how to make that space friendly to birds and bees for the very reasons that he outlines here, how essential they are to the ecosystems. But that's not what we see happening. You see a token gesture here and there. They'll plant a few flowers and they'll be like, this is a bee area. But they'll still be allowing the mass use of pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, which destroy the small animals and the wildlife of the places where they're used, right? So it's a very token effort. It's greenwashing, like that concept mentioned on the Bright Green Environmentalist page. It's greenwashing, really. So we're moving on now to Bitcoin. Promoted as the alternative to central banks and national currencies, Bitcoin is actually a prologue for the cashless society. It is against freedom, not for it. And that's all he says on Bitcoin. Pretty clear cut and dry. There you have it. Okay, the next one is Tony Blair. Tony Blair, the infamous war criminal and former Prime Minister of the UK, has his fingerprints all over the Agenda 21 wickedness. What a surprise. Blair is now positioning himself to be the first one world president. Don't bet against it happening. Incidentally, Blair is probably the wealthiest ex-Prime Minister in the UK. He and his family have built up a £35 million portfolio of 39 houses and flats. Tony and Cherie Blair own a £10 million mansion in Buckinghamshire and a London Mews house worth £1.7 million. Cherie and Ewan Blair co-own a portfolio of 31 flats. I don't know if Ewan is a typo. I'm guessing it is. I think that should be John. In my book, Rogue Nation, when discussing Blair's support for the illegal and immoral invasion of Iraq, I did predict that he might well find some personal financial benefit awaiting him upon his retirement. In the UK, Blair has been the most enthusiastic advocate for health passports. When he was Prime Minister, Blair tried to force through legislation forcing UK citizens to carry ID cards. The electorate was more feisty in those days and rejected the idea. Health passports, now widely accepted by many Britons, are merely a more intrusive and dangerous version of the ID cards, which were rejected. The irony is that Blair, widely recognised as a serial traitor and liar, as well as a war criminal, is so loathed that his words tend to have the opposite effect to the effect he intends. So, Blair was an obsessively enthusiastic Remainer, inspired by his support for Agenda 21, and his support for the EU helped ensure victory for the Brexiteers. His support for health passports may well be the best endorsement those opposed to health passports could possibly hope for. Incidentally, the BBC is desperately pro-Blair. If he has a view on anything, the BBC will give him unlimited time to share his opinions. Finally, although Blair appears to be a fervent supporter of the global warming cult, he opposed the building of a wind farm near to one of his own homes. Easy to believe, isn't it? Of course, he doesn't want a wind farm outside his kitchen window. Oh, Celine Lion, how's it going? Just seeing you over on Odyssey. Good to have you here. Hope you're doing well. Okay, the next bit is body ownership. You might think that whatever else they take away from you, your body will remain your property. If you thought that, you would be wrong. In the UK, for example, your organs can be taken by the state after you have died. That is the default position. Yeah, you have to opt out, right? If you don't want that to happen, you have to get in touch and say, hey, I don't want you to take my shit even when I'm dead, because you're going to take it while I'm alive. So isn't it outrageous, like how much you get just squeezed for while you're alive, and it's not enough. Even when you're dead, they're going to try and take stuff from you. What a sick system we are in. If you want to stop this happening, then you must sign a form insisting that your organs are not to be harvested. I think it is doubtful whether anyone will take any notice of such a form, which is unlikely to be available when you are being wheeled into the operating theatre so that surgeons can help themselves to your vital bits and pieces and hoping that you no longer need them. And what are you going to do about it if they have ignored your wishes? Sue them for return of your heart, liver, kidneys, and whatever else they've snatched? John Locke included property when he wrote about our having rights. But property doesn't just mean houses, land, cars, and socks. It also means your body. Indeed, a body is the only property we all have when we are born and which we all relinquish when we die. It's a great point. Reminds me a lot of Mark Passio and his discussions on natural law and how important property rights are to understand natural law as he teaches it. And your property starts with you. I mean, if you don't own your own body, if you don't get the final say over what goes into it and what is done with your body, then what do you own? Or can you own anything else, you know? So, the next bit is book burning. In the 7th century BC, the Neo-Assyrian king Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh was burnt. Book burning took off in England during the Reformation, when hundreds of thousands of books were destroyed, invariably by burning, as the monasteries where they were housed were dissolved and broken up, often literally. And in Europe, before and during World War II, from 1933 to 1945, the Nazis destroyed an estimated 100 million books. Of course, you don't have to burn books to stop people reading them. In 2009-2010, there were 4,356 public libraries in the UK. By 2018 to 2019, that number had fallen to 3,583. That is sad. There were never as many public libraries and reading rooms and educational institutes in the UK as there were during the much maligned Victorian era. And today, you don't have to burn books or close libraries. You just persuade the large social media companies to refuse to allow books which do not fit the approved demands to be sold on their platforms. I have personal and painful experience of this new version of book burning. I wonder how many of those directly involved in suppressing truths and replacing them with propaganda and pseudoscience realize just how dramatic the consequences will be. Journalists and broadcasters and members of the 77th Brigade of the British Army, paid to protect British citizens but currently involved in a propaganda and brainwashing campaign designed to hide the truth and to spread disinformation and to promote deceit, have all positioned themselves alongside Hitler and the other book-burning giants of history. By suppressing truths, supporting lies, and deleting facts, they are betraying everything that is decent and allying themselves alongside some of the worst tyrants in history. I wonder how many of those involved realize what is happening, why they are being used, and what the long-term consequences will be for them and their families. I wonder how many realize that one of Agenda 21's plans is to break up families and couples. People who are alone, isolated, and frightened are much easier to bully and to control than people who have friends and family around them. That's one of my favorite bits so far, that book burning part. I like it so much, I'm going to put a tab here in this page. If I can find my little tabs. Of course I can find my tabs. You know me, I would never be out of reach of little colored book tabs. That's just how I roll. I think the pink goes quite nicely as well with the book cover, the dark book cover here, and you got the pink tabs. So it's another fun part of being a nerd who puts loads of tabs in books all the time. But that book burning section, the decline in public libraries is heartbreaking. And I'm sure it's going to continue. But also, I bet the books that remain in the libraries are a lot of shit anyway. I bet they're no good. I bet there's nothing in there that isn't authorized and approved. Well, there might be, but not much. And then this part here about you got the 77th Brigade, but also the broadcasters, journalists, and members of the British Army, not to mention the police. All these order followers, all these people who are, he just words it so well that they are suppressing truth, supporting lies, and deleting facts. What is the karmic comeuppance that they're setting themselves up for? Because you don't get away with serving that kind of darkness in the world without some sort of, without paying some sort of price. And then what he says at the end about breaking up families and couples, again, just look in your life, look around you, look at the people you know, the history, the past of your families, the neighbors. Are people finding it easy to stay together over the long term or not? It's different for everybody, of course, personal. And if you find yourself in a place where you are surrounded by stable, happy, healthy families, couples who enjoy each other's company and love each other and stay together over the long term, then count yourself blessed, because it's harder and harder to find these days. And I know that people who are single tend to, for longer, later into life, tend to struggle when it gets later in life to find someone to be with, if that is their goal later on. And also people are being sort of led down a path of working. So go and get your career and spend 10, 15 years working your ass off for a corporation and then worry about romance and get a relationship. But they don't tell you that, like, how hard that could be at that point. If you spend 15 years serving your corporate masters, what kind of person are you going to be, and what kind of person is going to want to marry the kind of person that you're going to be, So you'll realize at some point that actually family, friends, relationships, children, all that kind of stuff, or, you know, that's where it's at. Our relationships with other people and other human beings is really where it's at. That's where our humanity shines and is best expressed. Like I said in the very beginning, the intro, that's what we got to protect and cultivate and spread around and get more of that out there. But it's definitely under attack, that's for sure. So the next section is going to be a good one. It's going to be a long one as well. This one's like 4 pages long, which is quite a lot. So this is on brainwashing. Governments around the world have, since the start of 2020, been attempting to brainwash their citizens, and they have been doing very well at it. Actually, the brainwashing and manipulation started some years ago. Students at school and university have for some time now been trained to question and disapprove of dissenters and critics of the establishment. Political correctness and virtue signaling have fathered a bizarre new race of obedient, compliant non-thinkers. Governments have been using a range of Orwellian mind control tricks during the crisis. The slogans, this is a really good point. The slogans, the clapping, and the symbols have all been carefully used to enable the authorities to take control of our thinking. I am grateful to Dr. Colin Barron, a former NHS doctor and eminent hypnotherapist who is the author of the book Practical Hypnotherapy, for pointing out to me just how our minds were taken over in 2020 and how we have been very successfully and skillfully manipulated into believing the lies we have been fed. I've got a book on hypnotherapy, but it's not that guy. The one I've got is not Practical Hypnotherapy, it's Successful Hypnotherapy. It's by Neil French. Look at that crosshair on the guy's forehead. That's an interesting image, isn't it? To be over on the front cover of this book. Crosshair right over his third eye. So yeah, I don't know what I actually inherited this from a very kind viewer who came into a bunch of books and was like, "Hey Nick, if you want any of these, you can have them." And I said, "Hell yeah, I want some of them." But I just thought it'd be quite a coincidence if it turned out to be the same book that he mentions here. But it's not, it's a different one. So carry on. If you want to understand like mind control and how repetition works and how you can be influenced, then talk to a hypnotherapist. A good one, an honest one, a decent one that's not going to steal your wallet. Not that they do that. All the hypnotherapists I know are really great people. Very kind, very knowledgeable, sincere, and they want to help. And they've learned what they've learned because they want to make lives better and improve things for people. That's just been my experience, but I'm incredibly blessed to meet wonderful people, and that has been the case for many, many, many years. So your experience may differ. But continuing, elected governments aided by specialist behavioral scientists have been, and that's scientists again, the people pushing the Technogaianism, have been brainwashing millions into accepting their propaganda. The mind is a wonderful thing. It responds in sometimes unpredictable ways. So, for example, if you see a headline which says, "Boris Johnson is an alien," then most people will probably dismiss it quite readily. But if the headline says, "Is Boris Johnson an alien?" readers will be more likely to suspect that the British Prime Minister might indeed be from another planet. And research shows that if people see a headline which says Boris Johnson is not an alien, then their suspicions will be raised still higher. So you got that? You want to ask a question? That will get people interested. And if you really want to get them interested, you want to say something you want to focus on the negative, frame it in a negative way. Manipulating and tricking the mind is a professional business. You've been brainwashed, and the brainwashing has been very subtle. We've all been quietly hypnotized and indoctrinated to accept the new mass hysteria generated by governments everywhere. Many people now enjoy staying at home, being paid by the government to do nothing. It's not exactly do nothing. You do get to slap your keyboard and watch Netflix. And they don't want it to end. It enables them to avoid responsibility for their own lives. Do you remember who said, quote, "Through clever and constant application of propaganda, people can be made to see paradise as hell and also the other way around, to consider the most wretched life as paradise"? It was Adolf Hitler. I've never read that Hitler quote before, which is not surprising. I actually haven't read a lot about Hitler, but that's a pretty good one. Makes sense, and it's true. It was Adolf Hitler who was a master at mass manipulation and the use of subliminal techniques. And it was Hitler who also commented that it was good fortune for governments that the mass of people did not think. The Nazis were very good at controlling people's minds. Goebbels, who was Hitler's propaganda chief, once said that if you repeat a lie often enough, then people will believe it. He also pointed out that if you want to control a population and you have to deal with opposition, then you should accuse the other side of the sin or the trickery which you yourself are using. So, governments everywhere have been accusing those who are telling the truth of spreading fake news. And remember, this is written in 2021. Anyone who doesn't toe the party line is dismissed as a dangerous conspiracy theorist, though the big conspiracies have all been coming from governments. Countries around the world have been promoting slogans to persuade their citizens to behave as required. In China, there was a slogan which said, "If you love your parents, lock them up." In Taiwan, people were told, "To visit each other is to kill each other." At first glance, the slogans which have been heavily advertised in the UK seem harmless enough. We all recognise them. Some, such as "We're all in this together," seem fairly innocuous, though we might all be forgiven for adding the rider that we are all in this together unless we work as advisors to the Prime Minister. The first trio of phrases which were promoted everywhere were "Stay alert, control the virus, save lives." That was my Boris Johnson impression. "Keep your distance, wash your hands, think of others." More recently, new phrases have been added to the repertoire. "Wash hands, cover face, make space." Or "Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives." The rhythm and pattern used in these phrases is not a coincidence. There are usually 3 words in each phrase and the phrases run in threes. This isn't a coincidence. It isn't happen chance. Using phrases of 3 words presented in groups of 3 is a technique known as the rule of 3 in psychological conditioning. And that's the reason for the 3 phrases with which we are all being bombarded. We've been trained and taught at the same time. It's behavioral psychology. Yes, behaviorism. Human experimentation, the hacking of the human animal, to put it in Yuval Noah Harari's terms. Other hypnotherapists have pointed out that if we repeat phrases often enough, then the words and thoughts become implanted in our subconscious minds and then become a belief which motivates our behavior. And so governments repeat slogans which become beliefs. It's called auto-suggestion, along the lines of "every day, in every way, I am getting better and better." Very important point he just made. And I'll expand on that to say this is why you have to be really careful about the music that you listen to. I got an album by the Fun Loving Criminals. It's their debut album, and they have that song called Scooby Snacks, which is pretty cheerful and upbeat. And I liked it back in the day. And it was in £2 in a secondhand charity shop. I thought, I'll get it, play it in the car. And there was a track on it, and one line that was repeated in this song was "I can't change." And it was repeated over and over and over and over again, like to the point of absurdity, where you're like, they couldn't put more lyrics in this song. It's a rap album. They're a rap band, even though it's kind of surf guitar music with a bit of horns, but the vocals are rap. And for a rap band to just have this one line, "I can't change, over and over again," to me, that was auto-suggestion. That was trying to put this seed in your mind, deep into your subconscious, that you can't change no matter what you do. You can't improve, you can't get better, you can't learn that new skill, you can't start that business, you can't rebuild that relationship, You can't say sorry for that thing you did. You can't ask to, I don't know, ask for that loan or ask for that helping hand that you need to get something done, right? I can't change. I just am the way I am. That's all it's ever going to be for me. And planning, and I thought, I'm not going to listen to that album again. But I notice it more and more as I listen to music and lyrics and music that I love, songs that I grew up with, that I have treasured memories associated with some of these albums and artists. But when you really listen to the repetition of the lyrics by way of choruses in particular, because the chorus is the part of the song that repeats, isn't it? You might get a chorus 3, 4, 5 times perhaps in a song. Auto-suggestion. So remember that. Continuing. Hitler was also a believer that if a lie was repeated often enough, it would eventually be confused with the truth by the greater part of the population. People more readily fall victim to the big lie than the small lie, said Hitler, since it would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Hitler used these techniques to control and manipulate the German people and to persuade them to accept the evil things he wanted them to do. George Orwell, who invented newspeak, also understood the importance of the 333 word phrase. In 1984, his futuristic novel, which was written in 1948, Orwell invented the slogan, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength," which I have added to. I have added to this, actually. I'll write it here as well. The bit that I have added is diversity is unity. That's the part that Orwell didn't foresee coming. But we are being told in this day and age, diversity is unity. If you want a picture of the future, wrote Orwell, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever. Power, he reminds us, is not a means, it is an end. Everything else that has been happening since February 2020 has been part of the brainwashing process. It has been noticeable that the instructions we have been given have been more like orders. The signs that have popped up like dandelions say, "Stand here," not "Please stand here." And why not? Because you don't say please to prisoners, do you? And then there are the weeks of clapping for carers and medical staff. Clapping, which probably started innocently and with good intentions, covers up the paradox, the quiet, insistent terror that comes from knowing that for all practical purposes there is no health care, and we have all been betrayed by politicians and bureaucrats who decided to devote entire health care programs to caring for a relatively small number of patients who have, or might be thought to have, or be susceptible to a flu-like virus. Dr. Milton Erickson, an eminent hypnotist, used to give his patients simple tasks to do. He would send them home to clean the attic or count the books they owned. All this was done as part of the process of mind control. The clapping was quickly and enthusiastically adopted and promoted by the people influencing our lives. Telling people to stand on their doorsteps at 8 p.m. on Thursdays and to clap is a simple, repetitive task. This is brilliant. Which is part of the mass hypnosis. Persuading people to do what you want them to do is part of the hypnotherapy process. I'll not correct him, but I'll add to that to say that that isn't necessarily always the case with all hypnotists in every session of hypnosis that you might go into. I've had hypnosis sessions where I was the driver of the session, and nothing was done or said or suggested or talked about that I didn't initiate and that I didn't give permission to have present in that session. Right? So it can be done like that. People often think of hypnosis as it's a manipulative thing, and they're going to convince me that I'm a chicken, and then I'm going to make a hooting sound every time that I see, every time that it's 2:00, something embarrassing like that. You see it on the TV shows all the time. Hypnosis is used as a way to embarrass people, to entertain, to get a laugh, to make them do silly things. Actually, it can be used as a very powerful way to investigate your own inner workings, your memories, your subconscious, your beliefs, your programming, your presuppositions, your assumptions, all of these different aspects of what make you you and what drive behavior can be investigated through hypnosis with a talented, honest hypnotist with integrity who is on your side and is working with your full permission and consent. So if you're interested in trying that out, I can point you in the direction of a hypnotist or two. But I just wanted to add that as a bit of context, because that's just speaking from my, personal experience. But yeah, so when he says persuading people to do what you want them to do is part of the hypnotherapy process, I'm sure it is, and it can be, but not always. Getting people to clap was also important in that it made people believe in the danger of the virus and the bravery of those working in healthcare. It helped people accept the fact that there were no beds available for patients with cancer or any other disorder. The rainbow, which appeared everywhere, is another part of the brainwashing process. Thousands have been so successfully brainwashed that they willingly take part in promoting the symbols and the slogans. The PSYOP specialists also understand that a question mark at the end of a headline strengthens the message, and that putting quotation marks around the statement means that more people will believe it. Many of these tricks were perfected by marketing gurus and mail order specialists. Yep, it all comes down to marketing and public relations. People like Edward Bernays. I tend to feel these days that everything is some sort of sales pitch. And it is in a lot of ways. I suppose it's partly because I'm looking at my own business and my own income and how I can move things around a little bit and enjoy a bit more freedom and be of service to others. And I've got all these questions going around in my head. And then you start to see that pretty much everything is a sales pitch. And very rare is it to find the person who isn't trying to sell you something, even if and a lot of them will play the long game. A lot of times it'll be a long game with a sale at the end of this long journey that they'll take you on. And sometimes it's more direct and upfront and kind of like, well, this is the thing. And, this is what I'm interested in selling to you. Do you need it? And trying to get you to think you need it so that you'll buy it. So it's a bit of a minefield. But as I said at the beginning, it can all be done ethically and with integrity and with the intention to serve and be of service to others, to the benefit of them and their lives and their goals. So it's finding that way that feels good to you, that's in line with your values, your ethics, and your integrity, right? That can take a bit of time. But the tricks that work on people are very well known and are taught and are used. So he's absolutely on the money there. That marketing gurus, mail order specialists, salespeople, they know what to say, how to do it, how to present it, how to nudge, how to suggest, how to hypnotize in a lot of ways as well. So being wise to those methods and tactics and helps people to avoid being taken in and manipulated by them. So continuing. Even the confusing rules about who we can and cannot see were part of the program. A minister recently told Britons that 2 people could meet 1 person, but that 1 person could not meet 2 people. If you confuse and bewilder at the same time that you are frightening people, then you unsettle them and create an anxious and obedient population. Yep, very important. Bearing all this in mind, I prepared my own triple-phrased slogan. 3 words and 3 phrases. Distrust the government. Avoid mass media. Fight the lies. Oops. That was really inexpert box drawing there. I just crossed it out, but that's a good 3-word, 3 slogan. Distrust the government. I'll say it again. It bears repeating. Avoid mass media and fight the lies. My slogans fit the brainwashing requirement perfectly. Okay, next section is brainwaves. Many workers in China now wear caps which monitor their brainwaves. The data acquired is used to monitor production and to redesign the way the work is done. The management even claim that they can increase efficiency by manipulating the length and frequency of breaks. The system is used in the military and on public transport. Brain surveillance Measuring emotions as well as other mental activities is already used in China, and it won't be long before it is coming to an office, store, or factory near you. Lightweight wireless sensors monitor the wearer's brainwaves and send the data to computers which can measure brainwaves and assess anxiety, depression, or anger. I think this is going to be the next generation of earbuds and earpods and these wireless things that people put in their ears, lightweight wireless sensors. And as that technology, and this goes back to what I was saying about the in the 2 Wikipedia pages we looked at, bright green environmentalism and its glorification of technology and the advancement of science. But what technology is being used and developed and funded? And it just happens to be that we're funding lightweight wireless biometric sensors. That's convenient. I wonder what we can use them for. Stick them on the heads of all our employees. We'll monitor their heart rates and their blood sugar levels and their stress levels and their brainwave activities all day, and we'll tally that up with what they're doing on their screen, because all their clicks and their keystrokes is being monitored and scanned as well by Windows 11, which has this AI-powered rollback feature where everything you do is monitored. And we'll connect those two together, and then we'll turn you into a perfectly productive machine, a robot, an automaton that doesn't need a rest, doesn't need a break, doesn't need to have creative outputs, doesn't need to have culturally enriching and soul satisfying activities such as singing and dancing and painting and playing games and telling stories and sitting around the fire. None of that. Just constant surveillance, data gathering fed into the algorithm which dictates how you live your life and what you should do and how you should live. It's kind of where we're going. Welcome to Technogaianism. Gaianism. That's it. Technogaianism. So the next one is a quote from Willy Brandt. If I were asked to say what, apart from peace, was most important to me, then my answer would be freedom. I don't know who Willy Brandt is, but I like his quote. Next is Brexit. British people voted to leave the EU, but Agenda 21 will take us much further along the same route, to a dangerous mixture of fascism and communism. Leaving the EU won't make any difference to the way Britain is run, unless the British people vote in a new parliament which stands firm against the United Nations plans for the world. Brexit was always doomed to be a disaster because no one in the establishment, on either side of whatever fence might divide political parties, wanted to damage the EU or the Agenda 21 aims and objectives. Meanwhile, I have a strong suspicion that Britons are being punished for voting Brexit. The laws have all been tougher in Britain than almost anywhere. Incidentally, the BBC, which fought against Brexit with all its might, and even admitted that its coverage was biased, continued to draw attention to all the drawbacks of Brexit after the UK had left the European Union. Building regulations. The Grenfell Tower fire appears to have involved cladding which was used as part of the attempt to reduce carbon emissions. 72 people died in that fire. Nearly 2 million people are living in potentially lethal and now unsaleable flats which have the same cladding. That appears to be yet another hollow victory for the global warming cultists. Well, I mean, burning a bunch of humans to death is definitely a victory for the global warming cultists. And Frank Lennon says, Willy Brandt was a former West German chancellor. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Anthrop, as well, for filling in that context. The flats, continuing about building regs, which were built to satisfy existing building regulations from the EU, are so badly designed and put together that they are failing newer regulations on walls, balconies, insulation, and cladding. Would-be buyers cannot obtain a mortgage on the flats, which will cost a fortune to rebuild. Maybe we can get Tony Blair to make a donation. Bunkers. The establishment has for years been building deep bunkers which are designed to be used not just by the government but by the military, the billionaires and the Bilderbergers. These bunkers, built and maintained with great secrecy, are designed to enable those living in them to survive for over 50 years. I'm not sure I'd want to live in a bunker for 50 years, especially if I had to share it with Mr. and Mrs. Gates and the British royal family. Yeah, I'd rather die on the surface, I think. Hunted down by a robot. All right, campaigners. It's always been up to us. So we're in the C section now of the book. It has always been up to us to shout stop when we have had enough of the wickedness around us. We all have a voice we can use, and we all have a duty to make sure that our voice is heard. If we remain silent, then we are just a part of the evil which is corrupting and destroying our world. We have to ignore the sad individuals who scoff or mock, either because they are being bought with a purse of silver or because they are too unintelligent to understand the nature of the war we are fighting. We must not allow ourselves to be put off by scorn, derision, undisguised contempt, or a lack of support or encouragement from others. Look through history, and we can all see that imaginative, thoughtful, and creative individuals have always had a hard time. This is really good. Look back, and you will find countless examples of citizens who were harassed or persecuted simply because they dared to think for themselves and tried to share their thoughts with others. The sad fact is that our world has never welcomed the original, the challenging, the inspirational, or the passionate, and has always preferred the characterless to the thought-provoking. Those who dare to speak out against the establishment have always been regarded as dangerous heretics. The iconoclast has never been a welcome figure in any age. Confucius, the Chinese philosopher, was dismissed by his political masters and his books were burned. Those who didn't burn his books within 30 days were branded and condemned to forced labor. 2,500 years later, Confucius's influence was still considered so dangerous that Chairman Mao banned his works. Described by the Delphic oracle as the wisest man in the world, Greek teacher Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens, arrested for being an evildoer, and a person showing curiosity, searching into things under the earth and above the heaven and teaching all this to others. Socrates was condemned to death. Dante, the Italian poet, was banished from Florence and condemned to be burnt at the stake if ever captured. After they had failed to silence him with threats and bribes, the Jewish authorities excommunicated Spinoza in Amsterdam because he refused to toe the party line, refused to think what other people told him he must think, and insisted on maintaining his intellectual independence. He and his work were denounced as forged in hell by a renegade Jew and the devil. Galileo, the 17th century Italian mathematician, astrologer and scientist, got into terrible trouble with the all-powerful church for daring to support Copernicus, who had the temerity to claim the planets revolved around the sun. Aureolus Philippus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, known to his chums as Paracelsus, made himself enemies all over Europe because he tried to revolutionize medicine in the 16th century. Paracelsus was the greatest influence on medical thinking since Hippocrates, but the establishment regarded him as a troublemaker. Pesky troublemakers. Ignaz Semmelweis, the Austrian obstetrician who recognized that puerperal fever was caused by doctors' dirty habits, was ostracized by the medical profession for daring to criticize practical procedures. Dr. John Snow fought 2 huge battles. He introduced anesthesia for women in confinement, and by removing the handle from the Broad Street pump in Soho, he helped prevent the spread of cholera in London. Both battles brought him enemies. Henry David Thoreau, surely the kindest, wisest philosopher who has ever lived, was imprisoned for sticking to his ideals. These are all my personal heroes. They show that original thinkers and people who do not fit neatly into the scheme of things have never gone down well. That section was brilliant. I really like that one. Campaigners. Very uplifting, very encouraging for those of us who are doing this kind of work and this kind of learning and on this sort of mission to understand these things and perhaps teach them to others and bring them to others. So that's a great quote there. Next section is camps. There has been much talk that dissenters, those who dare oppose the official lies, will be placed in quarantine camps or internment camps. It's difficult to see why these should not be named concentration camps. Short but sweet, to the point. I like it. Next is a quote by Albert Camus. The welfare and safety of the people is always the alibi of the tyrant. Yeah, another good one. Cancel culture. The supporters of Agenda 21 do not approve of free speech. Citizens everywhere must obey the rules and the regulations and whatever laws the bureaucrats decide to impose. From the early years of the 21st century, much new legislation has been introduced to control what people say as well as do. Much of it has been wrapped up in legislation ostensibly designed to stop religious hatred, but that was just an excuse to impose stricter and stricter rules controlling free speech. Almost anything which can be described as insulting or a hate crime is now illegal and severely punished. Moreover, the problem has spread to schools and universities where it has been encouraged by teachers and lecturers and taken up with great enthusiasm by students. Today, students refuse to be taught aspects of history which they find upsetting, uncomfortable, or anyway disagreeable. And of course, lecturers who attempt to talk about something which is deemed unpopular, unfashionable, or unacceptable will be refused the right to speak. Those who disobey are called out and censured. Institutions are forced to cancel lectures by those who have been targeted. Publishers will refuse to produce their books. Broadcasters will refuse to allow them on air, and periodicals will refuse to print articles by them. The cancel culture, whereby lecturers and others are banned if they attempt to say or write something which is considered unacceptable by the far left, started in universities but has spread. In the beginning, lecturers considered unacceptable were no platformed. They were not allowed to speak. And the excuse was that if they did speak, the students might be upset by what they had to say. This brutal attack on tolerance has now spread widely within society. In the UK, the government has talked about renaming the Churchill Room because Sir Winston Churchill is considered unacceptable for a variety of bizarre reasons. And senior civil servants have discouraged the use of the word blacklist because it is alleged to have racial overtones. I didn't know about that one. I didn't know the word blacklist was getting blacklisted. Capital letters for emphasis. Throughout its existence, the virus in the news, which I cannot name, has usually been dignified with unnecessary capital letters. This was done deliberately to suggest that the infection was more important than any other disease. No one in the media or government writes about tuberculosis or about malaria or malaria. And for those just listening in, he's capitalized the T in tuberculosis, or the second one he's written in all caps. And that's the point he's making, is that diseases aren't usually written in all caps or have a capitalized first letter. And so he says, even though these infectious diseases kill more people than the virus in question, they don't get capital letters. It's also become popular in left-leaning, politically extreme circles to use an initial capital when referring to black people, while retaining the lowercase initial letter while referring to white people. I hadn't noticed that one, but I'm going to be on the lookout for it now, for sure. All right, the next bit is relevant to last episode's Preamble Ramble and today's, because it's talking about carbon trading. So if you remember when we did our little investigation into technocracy and its origins and the original technocracy movement and Technocracy Incorporated, one of the foundational ideas of that movement was to get rid of fiat currency and the bankers and the banking system and all that, and to replace it instead with some sort of energy certificate system. And this is the version that we are now threatened with in our modern times. So carbon trading. When politicians choose to fly off on their latest freebie holiday instead of spending a fortnight camping in Cornwall, they respond to critics who want to know why they are polluting the environment and adding to global warming by claiming that they have purchased carbon offsets to balance their carbon footprints. Carbon trading is one of the biggest confidence tricks in history. In 2007, the British government said that everyone should have their own carbon swipe cards, forcing them to take more care of the environment. When former US Vice President Al Gore found himself under fire for using 20 times as much electricity in his Nashville mansion as the average American, he defended himself with the same argument. He claimed he offset all his carbon dioxide emissions by buying green credits. What most people probably don't realize is that Al Gore and a bunch of investors helped create the idea of carbon credits, whereby companies buy a license to pollute. The cost of the carbon credits, the license to pollute, is simply passed on to the public, and brokers who sell the carbon credits are making a fortune. The disgraced Ken Lay of the disgraced and now defunct Enron helped Gore set up the structure for carbon credit trading. Gore is not the only one heavily invested in the global warming scam. Many other leading politicians and scientists stand to gain billions from this fraud. And all the time, we must remember that the global warming scam, together with whatever pandemic is the flavor of the month and recurring financial crises, are all part of the pathway to Agenda 21 and a world government. The global warming scam was invented for a reason, but the protagonists are not above making huge sums of money from the fraud. Public figures all like to portray themselves as green and environmentally aware. I wonder if they're dark green or light green. They're definitely dark green. I don't need to ask that question. When asked about the fact that he has 3 Hummer vehicles, the former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, announced that 2 of the vehicles had been converted to take ethanol. Managing to say this with a straight face must have required more acting skills than I realized he had. Politicians and millionaire pop stars buy carbon emission offsets in order to balance their flying around the world in private planes. Oh, but Vernon Coleman, don't you know that burning jet fuel has a cooling effect? Oh, you obviously... Well, he wrote this before the Guardian article and the Telegraph article came out, right? So we'll forgive him for not knowing that. But this doesn't help the planet at all because carbon trading is practical hypocrisy. The European Union, the world's largest and most corrupt fascist organization. That's brilliant. That might be one of my favorite sentences so far. I love it. I'm going to read it again right after I finish drawing a little box around it. The European Union, the world's largest and most corrupt fascist organization, has set up its own carbon trading program, and if nothing else, it is a good example of how carbon trading works. The EU's program is called Emissions Trading Scheme, and as you might expect, the European Union scheme is of no benefit to the environment, the planet, or you and me. As you might equally expect, it is of enormous benefit to the large companies which are responsible for global warming. Officially, the EU's carbon trading scheme was set up to encourage dirty power stations to switch to cleaner forms of energy. Governments made it an integral part of their drive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In practice, the scheme has allowed the dirtiest polluters, the companies really responsible for global warming, to push up their bills and increase their profits without lowering the level of their greenhouse gas emissions. I don't know about you, but I am seeing my bills go up by the month, it seems. I know it's April, so April's the time where they crank it up and they say the bullshit that they say to justify it, but this is how it is allowed, right? So this is the prosperity that we are all benefiting from, thanks to dark bright green environmental Technogaianism, which is what we're going through. Doesn't that prosperity feel good? Aren't you enjoying your prosperity thanks to this movement and the efforts of these organizations? What a time to be alive. Even industry experts admit that the EU's carbon trading scheme has been a windfall which has allowed the big power companies to increase their profits massively. Here's how the scheme was set up. The EU gave permits to major electricity producers and manufacturers, allowing them to produce a fixed amount of carbon dioxide every year. Any company which reduced its allowed ration of pollution could sell its unused permit to pollute on the open market. A company which exceeds its allowed level of pollution had to buy extra credits in order to continue polluting. But here's the best bit. The EU succumbed to pressure from the polluters and handed out the permits free of charge. In case you thought that might be a misprint, I'll repeat it. The EU gave the power giants their permits entirely free of charge. The minute the big electricity producers had their permits, they simply cut their output of electricity in order to reduce their level of pollutants. They could then be able to sell their spare polluting capacity to other companies. Having cut the amount of electricity they were producing, the big electricity companies were also able to put up their prices. It was a double whammy. A bunch of the world's biggest polluters made extra money by charging more for their electricity. And they made extra money by selling off part of the permit to pollute, a permit which, remember, the EU had given them free of charge. Carbon trading is all a bit like the system of indulgences which was in vogue during medieval times. Sinners haggled with and then paid a corrupt priest a fee to absolve their sins. What a fantastic analogy, and reminds me of the description on Wikipedia of Technogaianism, which basically amounts to believe or die. So it's a religion, you know? It's a religion. It's the same scam that they did in the past, rebranded. It's got a different terminology, but it's the same scam. It works in the same way because it works, right? Because it worked in the past and it's working today. And every time it's just the same. When you look at it throughout history, it's the same scams, the same games, the same cons run over and over and over again, just rebranded for the age and the time and the people who are alive and the culture which is created and handed to us. They know that if they provide this culture to us and they give us this information through the indoctrination, the glowing rectangle on the wall, and the indoctrination camps known as schools, that will prep us to fall for the con that they have later, whereby they fleece us for all the wealth and the money and the property and all the other good stuff that is actually valuable. That section was fantastic. Carbon trading, I thought it was a really good one. So, as if it couldn't get any better, we've now got a quote from George Carlin. We've had Bill Hicks already, and now we got Carlin. What an episode this is turning out to be. So, a quote from George Carlin, who says, "I have certain rules I live by. My first rule, I don't believe anything the government tells me. Nothing. Zero." George Carlin is my second favorite behind Bill Hicks. I mean, of course, they're part of the system. They were allowed to do what they do, but they're still hilarious. And they did drop a bunch of truth. So, next, cash. This is not too long, actually, about 2 pages. One of the aims of Agenda 21 is to get rid of cash and replace it with digital money. This will make life much easier for the banks and for governments who will, with a few keystrokes, be able to separate dissidents from their money. And I will mention that it is Cash Friday, and Frank in the chat on YouTube is always diligent in reminding us of Cash Friday, and I appreciate that because it is important. Use it or lose it. We're going to lose it anyway, even if we use it, I think. But, you know, while we've got it, might as well use it and remind people, because it's a good way to point out what's coming. When you say to people, hey, look at the advantages of cash and the benefits of cash, and here are the reasons why it's superior. We're going to lose all that, and we are losing it rapidly. But this reality of a few keystrokes being able to separate dissidents from their money, well, remember Justin Trudeau and Canada's treatment of the Canadian Freedom Convoy truckers and the people who sent their money and donated to them, right? There was a total smear campaign run in the media, and the people's bank accounts were frozen. So if you have cash in your wallet, that cannot be frozen. You can spend it. You can find somebody to make an exchange with who has something that you want, and you can offer to give them money in exchange for that thing. If the money's in your bank account and it gets frozen, which can be done at any moment due to one wrong word or sending money to a wrong place, then you're out of luck, unless you've got another way to pay for things, which some people might. Got to be creative though. But let's continue with the section on cash. Early in 2020, it was suggested that a taxi driver had died because he had come into contact with cash contaminated with a virus. There was, of course, no evidence for this. Later, researchers showed that the virus in the news could survive for 28 days on surfaces such as banknotes. This discovery was given huge publicity and used as evidence that we shouldn't use cash, but should rely on credit cards and credit card machines, which, of course, do not ever get contaminated. What no journalists bothered to mention was that the experiment was conducted in the dark and that ultraviolet light kills the virus. It's amazing, isn't it, what we lived through, how it all went down, and that people still buy into it. But yeah, it was never mentioned that ultraviolet light is one of the best sanitizers, right? You hang your washing out on the line, you go and stand and get sunlight on your skin, on your body, in your eyes, and it's healing. It's regenerative. It's restorative. It's amazing. It's so powerful. You see it. You can see what's happening in spring right now because the sun's back for multiple hours during the day. Everything's coming to life, and they want to dim that out. They want to get rid of that. Spray it in a safe way, of course, because they need real-world data, because models only tell them so much, don't you know? It's just mind-blowing. I've lost my place. Oh no, here we are. Okay. So yeah, just to laugh at that, the fact that experiment was done at nighttime, because they knew that if they did it during the day, it would be, nothing would happen. They wouldn't have any thing to back up their scary headlines in order to justify the attack upon cash, which is untraceable, which give you a certain amount of freedom. Yes, cash itself is controlled by the people who have the money printing machine and the central banks and all that, but still, it's untraceable, right? There's fingerprints, probably got a bit of spit on it, maybe some nostril hair if you've been using it to sniff coke or whatever, but like, it's much less traceable than digital money, which is your option, which is your alternative, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. Amazing stuff. Ultraviolet light, get outside. If you're a bit sick, get some daylight, some sunshine. Get your feet in the grass, in the sand if you can. If you're lucky enough to live near sand, fresh air, sunshine. It literally works wonders. So let's continue. On the same day as I read about this piece of nonsense, a report by Which magazine showed that consumers were having difficulty buying essential foodstuffs because shops were refusing to accept banknotes and coins. By early 2021, the shortage of shops willing to accept cash had become a real problem for the millions of people who, for one reason or another, do not have a credit card and do not have access to the internet. People had become accustomed to paying for things and services with their credit cards or mobile telephones, and the events of 2020 pushed cash further into the background. Cash points will soon be as uncommon as telephone boxes. This is the future. Cash gives us freedom, so you can see why they are so keen to get rid of it. Besides, the ubiquitous Bill Gates has a patent on a method of controlling digital currency and human body functions. The Better Than Cash Alliance, lobbying for, among other things, an end to cash, was partly funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That bit is, not that we've any reason to doubt what he's saying at all, but that bit is true. That patent, it's got a really weird title. It's something like NWO 060606, patent awarded to Microsoft, and it is to do with mining cryptocurrencies using body activity and sensory information gained from body data and activity. I don't know. something like that. But yeah, it's a real thing. I looked it up. It's crazy. Governments everywhere want to eradicate cash and replace it with digital money. Helped by the mass media, they are using the new excuse to force us all to stop using real money and instead to pay for everything with credit cards or phone apps. In China, 85% of all transactions are already done by mobile phone. Despite the fact that governments and banks persistently claim that cash carries disease, the risk is no greater than it has always been. All you need to do is wash your hands after handling cash. And cash gives us freedom and privacy. Below are some facts explaining why cash is vital. Cash gives us freedom of movement and behavior. Without cash, they will be able to track our every move. They will always know where we are, what we are buying, and what we are doing. Privacy will be gone. Cash helps teach children the value of money. It gives a sense of reality and the importance of money. Cash helps stop people going into debt. Many people rely on cash, and without it will be unable to buy food. Nearly 1 in 5 people in Britain relies on cash and would struggle to survive without it. The millions, including the elderly and the homeless, who do not have bank accounts or access to the internet, would find life impossible. Cash may be vulnerable to thieves, but if you lose your wallet or purse, all you lose is the cash you were carrying. Using a phone or plastic card for every transaction means that your details are at greater risk of being stolen. If your phone or plastic cards are stolen, you can lose everything, including your identity. When cash has disappeared, banks may charge a transaction fee for every item bought, and possibly for every item sold. If you rely entirely on credit cards, the banks will be able to cut off your access to money very easily. If you misbehave, you will be denied access to your own money. If, for example, you are a diabetic, the authorities will be able to prevent you from buying sweet foods. It will be easy to prohibit the sale of certain items, such as alcohol. If you are considered a troublemaker, you will be prevented from traveling. The immediate aim is to get rid of plastic cards and replace them with a universal phone app, so that all financial transactions have to be managed by phone. The medium-term plan is to replace phone apps with implanted chips, which will make us all slaves to an electronic system. Implanted chips are already being trialed. Eventually, the implanted chips will contain every bit of information about you. It will be possible to turn these chips off in an instant from afar. Without cash, and by forcing us to keep all our money in banks, the big banks will be able to extend negative interest rates. Shops which ban cash are excluding many citizens and helping to remove our basic freedom and privacy rights. To keep cash alive, we should all insist on paying with cash whenever possible, and we should try to avoid stores which refuse to accept cash. Brilliant. On the money. I didn't even intend that pun there. But it's not surprised that it's the first one that popped into my head, is it? He is on the money. Celine Lyon says, kills a virus that's never been isolated and proven to cause illness. Shame he seems to miss that part. Well, not all of us can get everything right, can we? I mean, the way I think of it is like everybody has some pieces of the puzzle. You might go to James Corbett for something, then you go to Whitney Webb for another thing, then you go to Vernon Coleman for something. And if you broaden your sources and get in a wide variety, then you can piece it together much more effectively than if you just rely on a handful, one or two, or, because not everyone has the time to research every single aspect and angle of every topic and situation. So, yeah, the virus isolation question and virology as a discipline and the problems with it, it's a deep rabbit hole, very divisive, very charged, makes people get emotional for some reason. Maybe Coleman just didn't have the time, the aptitude, the energy to go into all that. Plus, he's a GP or was a GP, and so he's probably very used to the germ theory and the germ paradigm, the germ theory paradigm, let's say. So, yeah, I don't mind that he's not doubling into that particular aspect of it. He might do later. there could. I'm skipping ahead now to the V section to see if maybe there's something here about viruses. TUW. Huh. Okay, we got a V. What we got? Veganism, vertical farming, vitamin D, and voice recognition. Nothing about viruses. I might leave it there, actually. I feel like C, cash is a good place to leave it. And we got a massive section coming up on censorship, which I don't think we'll get through. Actually, we'll read up to censorship and then we'll call it a night. So the next one is CCTV. New CCTV cameras have been made that will block people from entering a shop if they are not obeying the rules about face coverings. The cameras will help staff tackle difficult customers and will prevent the disabled, the mentally ill, and those with hidden infirmities such as asthma or heart disease from entering shops and buying scarce food supplies. The cameras are used to operate shop doors. If a shopper without a covering approaches, the door remains firmly and resolutely closed. Only when an obedient shopper approaches does the door open. Celebrities. In the early days of 2020, a surprising number of celebrities, politicians, and world leaders fell ill with the virus. In view of the remarkably small number of non-celebrities affected by the virus, it seems clear that this was part of a plan to help promote the significance of the infection and to create fear. Later, as the anger at the lies grew, governments around the world started hiring minor celebrities to endorse the fraud and to promote the rollout of a medical procedure. Did any of the celebrities actually know anything about the procedure they were promoting? I suspect not. I doubt it very much too. I think they were just getting paid. That's what celebrities do, right? They're paid to stand in front of a camera and speak words that are not their own. That's the essence of actors and celebrities and singers. Okay, we've got one on cell phones. This will be our last section for tonight's reading. It is impossible to talk, write, hint, or even dream that there might be something just the teeniest bit worrying about 5G without being dismissed as a traitor, a cheat, a liar, a conspiracy theorist, and probably someone who parks in those supermarket bays reserved for mothers with small children. But there are now thousands of scientific papers proving that electromagnetic field radiation can cause serious health problems, particularly for children whose bodies are still growing and whose skulls are much more thinner than adult skulls. When I first wrote about these dangers in the late 1980s, I was regarded as a madman. But today, the evidence is unequivocal. The problem is that wireless products such as cell phones were never safety tested properly. They were just assumed to be safe, and although the industry has done some tests, no long-term assessments have been done. Insurance companies are so concerned that they won't give health cover to cell phone companies. Here are some facts. Wi-Fi and cell phones can cause long-term infertility and psychological problems such as depression, suicide, and paranoia and sleepiness. Other problems include DNA changes, endocrine changes, developmental changes, behavioral problems, and cancer. Parkinson's disease and dementia may also be caused. Many schools, particularly in the UK and USA, are boasting that they have boosted their Wi-Fi capability, but some countries have banned Wi-Fi and cell phones in schools where small children are taught. In 2008, it was reported that Switzerland, France, Germany, Belgium, and England had been removing Wi-Fi from schools. Now Wi-Fi is back in English schools. The Austrian Medical Association has stated that electromagnetic fields and radiation accumulate and concluded that children should categorically not use mobile phones. On July the 20th, 2020, the Russian government recommended the banning of Wi-Fi and cell phones in all elementary schools. The Russians were experimenting with radio frequency weaponry in the 1940s and knew a good deal about the dangers. In June 2011, the Council of Europe called for a ban on Wi-Fi and cell phones in schools. In 2012, UNICEF found that Wi-Fi in schools caused an increase in central nervous system disorders, epilepsy, psychological problems, and blood and immune system disorders. France banned Wi-Fi in nursery schools in 2018 and restricted its availability to children under the age of 11. The WHO has confirmed that electromagnetic fields can be carcinogenic, doing more damage to children because of their thinner skulls and developing bodies. The bone marrow of a child's head absorbs 10 times more radiation than that of an adult. The Council of Europe has warned of the dangers of installing routers in schools. There are thousands of relevant scientific papers. If you want a list of papers available, I recommend the book Hidden Dangers by Captain Jerry G. Flynn. A simpler overview without references is available in my book, Superbody. And also look out for videos by Barry Trower, a British former naval officer. I recommend Captain Flynn's book for those who want references to show to head teachers, etc. That is the end of our reading tonight. The next section, as you can see, is censorship, and it is quite a big one. I think he's going to tell us a little bit of story about his experiences being censored. But that book, I'll just get that back on camera again, is, if you want to look it up, I certainly will be doing, is Hidden Dangers. And it is Jerry G. Flynn. Definitely one worth grabbing hold of, in my opinion. So there you have it. Part 3 of Hidden Agenda 21 by Vernon Coleman. Complete. What do you think about that? I'm going to have a sip, we'll review the comments, and then we'll wrap it up and get out of here. So, been quiet over on Rumble and Odyssey this evening, but we got LJ, Frank, Adam, Mr. Anthrope keeping the party going over on YouTube, which is awesome. LJ saying lemon balm is lovely, it makes a nice bedtime tea. And why do people think eventually with their solar panels they will get free electricity? It's all marketing. That's why most people, the reason people think things is because of some sort of marketing campaign that has convinced them of that thing. Sales and marketing. I'm telling you, when you start looking into business and business building, and you start looking at sales and marketing and understanding it, you see it everywhere. And then that's all you see. Just all these different ways of selling things to people and marketing things to people, and often it's marketing an idea. And that was Edward Bernays' big kind of revelation, not revelation, but the strategy that's way older than him, obviously, but is kind of attributed to him in the modern era, that he figured out that you could associate certain ideas with products and sell that idea, and people would buy the product when actually what it was that they wanted was some abstract thing like freedom or time or peace of mind or relaxation or confidence. You know, these are sort of more intangible things. You would attach those things to the product in the minds of the prospect, and then they would be much more likely to buy it because they would think that this particular thing would give them that intangible quality or characteristic. Marketing and advertising and sales, look it up, become an expert in it. Your view of the world will change massively. But yeah, really good stuff. Again, from Vernon Coleman. I think he's really written a winner with this book, and we are so lucky and that we get to enjoy it, I think, in its entirety. So I'll just mention again that it would be good. Can't see the button there. That it'd be good for people to go check out vernoncoleman.com. Order his books on Amazon. They're usually between £5 and £10, right? And they're just standard paperbacks. This one's a really good one to get. It's longer than some of his books are quite short, sharp, to the point, no nonsense type books. This one's a bit longer, a bit more detailed. It's got more in it. Buy them, snap them up. Also, heartily recommend Reportage by James Corbett, Essays on the New World Order, especially not like that one essay I mentioned, linking eugenics to the environmental movement. Honestly, all the essays are good. and they're all referenced as well. So you'll have more books to buy, and you become aware of different resources, and they're all he's put links to all the resources as well, so you can type the links into your browser and check that he's not just bullshitting. He's actually pointing to publications and documents and the writings to back up what he's saying. So please consider grabbing those too. They're very good, and I've talked to the authors, and I think they are well-meaning good people who are trying to do something beneficial. I think that's about it. I think that's all we got to say and do for tonight. So thank you for hanging out. Tammy, Hasdak, Frank, Cancer is Ali, higher from Northern AZ. How's it going? Did I read your name right? I'm not sure if I did or not. But yeah, hello to you. Good to have you here. I'm not sure where AZ is. Adam, Mr. Anthrope, LJ. I think that's all of you on YouTube. I don't think I missed anybody. Stars, who was here earlier. Hope you're doing all right if you're still hanging on in there. Anna M. Plutonium Productions. Timmy. I bet you hate it when people say your name like they say it in South Park. David Lees as well. What's up? Good to have you here. Heidi on Rumble. Celine Lyon and The Outsiders. Outlier over on Odyssey. Love you all very much. It's so humbling and awesome to have people tuning in live and watching on the replay. If you just watched on the replay and you're still listening to the very bitter end, I love you too. That's even more heroic in many ways, because you probably know that there's not much left to to this live stream now. So that's it. I'm going to be back next Friday. We'll be continuing with Endgame. The first topic is going to be censorship. We'll hear about Vernon Coleman's experience with this. He's had a long career. He's been putting out resources, books, articles for many, many, many years, and he has paid a price for it. He sent me an email recently describing the kind of things that have happened to him in the last few years. It's grim, and it's heartbreaking to know that this is how truth tellers get treated in the modern age. But this is where we are. And what needs to happen is more people need to stand up and tell the truth, because not all of us can be harassed. Not all of us can be bullied. Not all of us can be intimidated. There's just not enough resources to get everyone all at once. So more people step up, speak your truth, put your voice out there, make the content. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. It can be your own personal style, but each individual speaking the truth as they see it is critically important, and there's more safety in numbers that way. Yes, some people will get persecuted and slapped and knocked around and threatened and whatnot. It's always going to happen. Anything that's worth doing, anything that is valuable, anything that is meaningful, when you are trying to serve truth, freedom, and humanity, and the very qualities which make us human, which are under attack every single day by the screens and the technology and the algorithms and all that stuff, by the Technogaianism that we're living through, the dark, bright green Technogaianism. We got to keep our humanity alive, and the way we do that is by being human, being creative, telling stories, hugging, shaking hands, cooking, singing, dancing, laughing, being joyful, being joyous, being optimistic, being positive, being defiant, finding ways to help each other out, making sure we don't lose too much time to staring at screens and allowing our minds to be programmed by people who, they don't like us. They don't want us to be alive and thriving and happy and healthy and well. So we might as well say, fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway. Because who are you to tell me not to do that, right? So get out there and live it. Put some life into your life, and the people around you will be glad and grateful for it, and they'll be like, oh wow, you're so full of positivity and energy, and you really, people enjoy being around you, and they enjoy spending time with you, and then that's how you bring good things into reality. So, and yes, get an allotment plot and grow some food. That's what Hasdak says, and that's also very important. And you've been telling me that for a while, and I admit it's something I still got to do. It really is. I appreciate your persistence and your reminder to do that. And I have a little garden that I could grow some stuff in, So I've got the space. Now it's just finding the time, resources, learning what I need to learn, building the greenhouse, putting the raised beds in, all that sort of thing. Hasdak, if you have resources or any advice, please shoot me an email with that. And that goes to anyone. If you want to get in touch, my email address is very easy to find. It's autonomoususername@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you and hear about your story, who you are, what you're up to. If you've got any good books to recommend, that's always nice. And I think we're going to end it there. So hope you all have a fantastic week. Really do all the good stuff. Enjoy spring. Beautiful time of year. Amazing to see all the colors coming out, the animals, the vegetation. And, enjoy the sun before they block it out completely. So, yeah, that's all I got to say, I think. I'm going to leave it there. Take care of yourselves and each other. And until next time, God bless.